The western reaches of the Japanese archipelago hold landscapes that inspired something enduring in the world of Pokémon. Ancient temples that rest against mountain slopes, and traditional architecture lines pathways where modern trainers walk the same routes that travelers took centuries before. This is the foundation from which the Johto region emerged, carrying the weight of history into a world of creatures and adventure. And before you drift off, consider subscribing for more calming journeys like this, and thank you for helping us gently approach 2,000 subscribers tonight. The journey begins in a quiet settlement, tucked away from the larger cities, a place where the air feels different, slower, as if time itself moves with more intention. Before any trainer steps onto the first route or faces the first challenge, there is a moment of preparation, a single choice that shapes everything that follows. The professor waits with 3 companions, each one representing a different path through fire, water, and grass. Professor Elm stands as the guiding figure of this region, a researcher devoted to understanding the mysteries of Pokémon breeding and evolution. His laboratory becomes the starting point for new trainers, the place where potential transforms into action. The 3 starter Pokémon offered here carry distinct qualities that extend beyond simple type advantages. Cyndaquil, the fire mouse Pokémon, possesses flames that erupt from its back when threatened, creating protective barriers of heat. Totodile, the big jaw Pokémon, approaches the world with playful aggression, its powerful bite concealing surprising loyalty. Chikorita, the leaf Pokémon, releases a calming fragrance from the leaf atop its head, a scent that can soothe aggressive Pokémon and ease tension in battle. The selection of a partner creates the first bond between trainer and Pokémon, a relationship that will be tested repeatedly throughout the journey ahead. Each starter evolves twice, growing stronger through experience and forming deeper connections with their trainers. Cyndaquil becomes Quilava, then Typhlosion, with flames that burn hot enough to create shimmering heat distortions in the air. Totodile evolves into Croconaw, then Feraligatr, developing into a predator capable of crushing stone with its jaws. Chikorita transforms into Bayleaf, then Meganium, its fragrance intensifying as it matures, capable of revitalizing wilted plants and calming even the most aggressive wild Pokémon. The town of New Bark sits at the edge of everything, a place small enough that every resident knows each other by name. Houses with traditional roofing cluster together, and the scent of pine drifts down from the surrounding forests. Trainers who begin their journeys here often feel the weight of expectation, the knowledge that Professor Elm believes in their potential enough to entrust them with a rare Pokémon. The first steps away from this town mark the beginning of something larger, a transition from observer to participant in the living world of Pokémon. Route 29 stretches between New Bark Town and the first real challenge awaiting trainers. Wild Pokémon rustle through tall grass here, Pidgey and Rattata primarily, creatures that have adapted to living near human settlements. The tall grass sways with passing wind, and occasionally a Sentret stands upright on its tail, watching trainers pass with curious eyes. This route represents the gentlest introduction to the wild, a space where mistakes carry minimal consequences and learning happens naturally. Cherry Grove City emerges as the first destination, a coastal settlement where the ocean breeze carries the salt scent inland. Buildings here are constructed with ocean proximity in mind, designed to withstand storms and high winds. The Pokémon Center stands as a beacon for weary trainers, offering healing and rest without charge, embodying the philosophy that Pokémon welfare takes precedence over profit. The Pokémart provides basic supplies, potions, and antidotes, and repels, the tools necessary for survival in the wilderness between towns. The journey northward from Cherry Grove introduces trainers to the concept of encounters with other trainers, battles that test skill and strategy rather than simple type advantages. These early battles teach fundamental lessons about speed and power, about reading opponents, and adapting tactics mid-battle. Youngsters and lasses challenge passing trainers with enthusiasm, their Pokémon often newly caught and still learning the rhythms of battle. Each victory builds confidence, each loss teaches humility, and the combination creates trainers who understand that strength alone cannot guarantee success. Route 30 winds through forested areas where sunlight filters through canopy leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground below. Wild Pokémon here include Lediba, insects that gather in swarms during daytime hours, and Spinarak, spiders that weave intricate webs between tree branches. The route splits at certain points, offering choices between direct paths and longer routes with more wild encounters. Trainers who take their time here discover hidden items tucked beneath rocks or behind trees, rewards for thorough exploration. Dark Cave presents the first real obstacle, a network of tunnels where natural light cannot penetrate. The entrance yawns open like a mouth, and inside, the temperature drops noticeably. Trainers without a Pokémon capable of using Flash must navigate through darkness, feeling along walls and moving cautiously to avoid stumbling. Wild Zubat inhabit these caves in large numbers, their echolocation allowing them to navigate effortlessly through pitch-black passages. The cave connects two areas of Johto, serving as both shortcut and challenge for those willing to brave its depths. Violet City stands as the first major settlement on the journey, a place where tradition and modernity coexist in careful balance. The Sprout Tower dominates the skyline, a multi-story structure built entirely of wood, swaying gently even in light winds. Inside this tower, monks train alongside their Bellsprout, practicing meditative techniques and battling visitors who climb the floors. The tower's swaying motion is intentional, designed to teach balance and adaptability, lessons that apply equally to Pokémon battles and daily life. The first gym challenge awaits in Violet City, where Faulkner serves as gym leader and guardian of the Zephyr Badge. His specialty lies with flying-type Pokémon, creatures that dominate aerial combat and punish opponents who rely solely on ground-based attacks. Faulkner's signature Pokémon, Pidgeotto, demonstrates the principles he teaches: speed combined with precision, powerful attacks delivered from angles that ground-bound Pokémon struggle to defend against. Defeating Faulkner requires understanding that type disadvantages can be overcome through strategy, that a well-timed attack matters more than raw power. The Zephyr Badge gleams when held to light, shaped like a pair of wings in flight. This first badge represents more than victory over a gym leader. It symbolizes the beginning of a legitimate journey through the Johto League, official recognition that the bear has proven themselves worthy of continuing. Each badge earned grants specific benefits, allowing the use of certain field moves outside of battle, and the Zephyr Badge permits the use of Flash in dark caves, illuminating passages that were previously impassable. Route 32 descends southward from Violet City, following the coastline where waves crash against rocky shores. The scent of ocean spray mingles with the earthier smells of inland vegetation, creating a unique atmosphere found only in coastal transition zones. Wild Pokémon here include Mareep, electric-type sheep, whose wool stores electrical charges, and Bellsprout plant Pokémon that sway hypnotically as they search for prey. Trainers walking this route often stop to watch the ocean, taking moments of quiet between battles to appreciate the natural beauty surrounding them. The Ruins of Alph stand as monuments to a civilization that predates modern Johto, stone structures covered in mysterious symbols that scholars have spent lifetimes attempting to decipher. These ruins consist of 4 puzzle chambers, each one requiring trainers to arrange sliding panels into coherent images. Solving these puzzles thus opens passages into underground chambers where unknown reside, Pokémon shaped like letters of the alphabet, existing in 28 distinct forms. The purpose of these ruins remains unclear, though theories suggest they once served as a place of worship, or perhaps a sophisticated writing system. Unown communicate through telepathy, their thoughts manifesting as simple words or phrases in the minds of those who encounter them. Despite their individual weakness in battle, Unown possess a collective consciousness when gathered in large numbers, creating phenomena that defy conventional understanding. Trainers who spend time in the ruins of Alph report strange dreams and visions, images of ancient Pokémon and civilizations long vanished. Whether these experiences stem from unknown influence or from the ruins themselves remains a subject of ongoing debate among researchers. Union Cave stretches beneath the surface, a massive underground network connecting multiple regions of Johto. The main passage remains well traveled, but side tunnels branch off into darkness, leading to caverns where rare Pokémon make their homes. Water flows through certain sections, creating underground rivers where Wooper and Quagsire drift lazily, their simple expressions hiding surprising resilience in battle. The deeper sections of Union Cave remain unexplored, tunnels that descend into absolute darkness, where even the most experienced spelunkers refuse to venture without extensive preparation. Azalea Town emerges from the forest like something from a storybook, houses built around massive trees rather than clearing them away. The residents here maintain a deep respect for nature, understanding that human civilization exists as a guest in the forest rather than its master. The scent of charcoal hangs in the air, produced in traditional kilns that have operated for generations. This charcoal burns hotter and cleaner than modern alternatives, prized by metalworkers and artisans throughout Johto. Slowpoke Well sits on the outskirts of Azalea Town, a natural spring where slowpoke gather in large numbers, drawn by something in the water that appeals to their species. Local legend holds that these slowpoke bring good fortune to the town, and residents treat them with reverence, leaving offerings of food and ensuring their habitat remains undisturbed. The well descends deep underground, and in its lower levels, the water possesses strange properties, causing some slowpoke to evolve into slowbro when they bond with Shelder, or into Slowking when exposed to special items while holding their tails. The second gym challenge awaits in Azalea Town, where Bugsy presides as gym leader and keeper of the Hive Badge. Despite his youth, Bugsy has achieved mastery over bug-type Pokémon, creatures often underestimated due to their early evolutionary stages and perceived weaknesses. His signature Pokémon, Scyther, demonstrates the true potential of bug types, its bladed forearms capable of cutting through steel, its speed rivaling the fastest Pokémon in existence. Defeating Bugsy requires recognizing that type advantages mean little when facing an opponent who has perfected their battle strategy. The Hive Badge resembles a honeycomb when examined closely, each hexagonal cell perfectly formed. This badge grants trainers the ability to use Cut outside of battle, allowing them to clear small trees and bushes that block certain paths. More importantly, it represents understanding that strength comes in many forms, that the smallest Pokémon can achieve victory through proper training and tactical awareness. Ilex Forest spreads across a vast area between Azalea Town and the roots beyond, a place where sunlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy overhead. Ancient trees tower hundreds of feet high, their trunks so wide that several people linking hands cannot encircle them. The forest floor remains in perpetual twilight, creating an environment where shade-loving Pokémon thrive. Sparas and Parasect scuttle through fallen leaves, the mushrooms on their backs drawing nutrients from the decay around them. The forest shrine sits deep within Ilex Forest, a structure maintained by a lone guardian who tends to the needs of a particular Pokémon. This shrine honors the forest's protector, though the identity of this protector changes depending on when one visits. Some trainers report encountering Celebi here, the time travel Pokemon said to appear only in times of peace, bringing vitality to forests wherever it manifests. Celebi's ability to traverse time makes it nearly impossible to study, as it appears and disappears without warning, leaving behind only the subtle evidence of its presence in the form of rejuvenated plant life. Celebi possesses a unique connection to forests across all time periods, able to travel freely between past and future while maintaining awareness of events in the present. Legends describe it as a guardian of nature itself, intervening when forests face existential threats, though these interventions happen so subtly that most observers miss them entirely. The shrine in Ilex Forest serves as an anchor point, a location where Celebi can manifest more easily due to the concentration of natural energy and the reverence shown by the guardian who maintains it. Route 34 extends eastward from Ilex Forest, opening into fields where tall grass sways in constant motion. Wild Pokemon here include Drowsy, psychic types that feed on dreams, and Ditto, transforming Pokemon capable of perfectly copying the appearance and abilities of other species. The daycare facility sits along this route, operated by an elderly couple who raise Pokemon for trainers willing to leave their partners in capable hands. Pokemon left here grow stronger through experience, and occasionally compatible pairs will produce eggs, continuing the cycle of life and evolution. Goldenrod City sprawls across a massive area, the largest urban center in Johto, where traditional architecture gives way to modern construction. The city pulses with activity at all hours, trainers and business people, and tourists moving through streets in constant flow. The Goldenrod department store rises several stories high, offering everything a trainer might need, from basic potions to rare evolutionary stones. The sheer scale of this city can overwhelm newcomers, the noise and movement and endless options creating sensory overload for those accustomed to quieter settlements. The Goldenrod radio tower broadcasts across all of Johto, its signals reaching even the most remote corners of the region. Programs range from music to news to special shows dedicated to Pokemon training advice. The tower itself stands as a marvel of engineering, visible from miles away, its red lights blinking warnings to flying Pokemon that might otherwise collide with its structure. The tower's importance to regional communication makes it a strategic target, and its security reflects this vulnerability, with guards stationed at every entrance. The Goldenrod Tunnel runs beneath the city, an underground passage where shops operate in spaces carved from bedrock. The air down here feels cooler and carries a mineral scent, and the acoustics create strange echoes that make conversations difficult to follow. Trainers navigate these tunnels carefully, as the layout can be confusing, with passages that seem to loop back on themselves and dead ends that appear without warning. The tunnel eventually connects to other areas of the city, providing shortcuts for those familiar with its layout. The third gym challenge awaits in Goldenrod City, where Whitney presides as gym leader and guardian of the Plain Badge. Her specialty lies with normal-type Pokemon, creatures that lack obvious weaknesses but possess well-rounded capabilities in all areas. Whitney's signature Pokemon, Miltank, has achieved legendary status among trainers for its devastating combination of rollout and milk drink, a strategy that builds power while maintaining health, creating a nearly unstoppable offensive juggernaut. Defeating Whitney requires patience and careful strategy, as rushing into battle often results in crushing defeat. The Plain Badge gleams with simple elegance, lacking the ornate designs of other badges, but carrying its own understated beauty. This badge allows trainers to use strength outside of battle, enabling them to move large boulders that block certain paths. More significantly, earning this badge means overcoming one of Johto's most formidable gym leaders, a trainer whose skill level exceeds what her position as the third gym leader might suggest. Route 35 continues northward from Goldenrod City, passing through areas where urban development gradually yields to natural landscapes. The national park occupies a large section of this route, a protected area where wild Pokémon live without fear of capture. The park hosts bug-catching contests regularly, competitions where trainers attempt to catch the strongest bug-type Pokémon within a time limit. Winners receive prizes ranging from rare evolutionary stones to valuable held items, though the true reward lies in the challenge itself, the test of skill in quickly identifying and capturing high-quality Pokémon. Ecruteak City emerges from the landscape like a portal to ancient times, a settlement that has resisted modernization in favor of preserving historical architecture and traditions. Wooden buildings with sloped roofs line narrow streets, and the scent of incense drifts from the burned tower, mixing with the aroma of tea from traditional houses. This city holds deep spiritual significance in Johto, serving as the center for legends involving the region's most powerful Pokémon. The burned tower stands as a monument to tragedy and rebirth, a structure that once reached toward the sky before lightning struck it during a terrible storm. The fire that followed consumed the tower, killing 3 Pokémon trapped inside, while Lugia and Ho-Oh watched from their perches. The tower's ruins remain as they fell, charred beams jutting at odd angles, floors collapsed into the basement levels. Despite its ruined state, the tower radiates an aura of significance, as if the events that transpired here left permanent marks on the very air. The 3 Pokémon who perished in the burned tower's flames received unexpected mercy through Ho-Oh's intervention. The rainbow Pokémon descended from the sky, wreathed in sacred fire, and blessed the fallen creatures with resurrection. This process transformed them completely, rebirthing them as legendary beasts with powers tied to the elements that had once destroyed them. Raikou emerged as the embodiment of lightning, the force that had struck the tower. Entei arose as the living volcano, representing the fire that had consumed the structure. Suicune manifested as the purifier, embodying the rain that had fallen too late to prevent the tragedy. These 3 legendary beasts scattered across Johto immediately after their rebirth, running without destination or purpose beyond movement itself. They roam endlessly, appearing in random locations before fleeing at the first sign of human presence. Trainers who encounter them describe feelings of profound awe mixed with frustration as the beasts vanish before any battle can truly begin. Capturing any of these 3 requires extraordinary patience and planning, tracking their movements across the region and preparing encounters in advance. Raikou carries the storm wherever it travels, clouds gathering overhead and thunder rumbling in the distance even on clear days. Its roar echoes across valleys and through forests, a sound that wild Pokémon recognize as a warning to seek shelter. Raikou's power over electricity extends beyond simple attacks. It can redirect lightning strikes, drawing them away from populated areas or focusing them on specific targets with devastating precision. The discharge from its body creates standing fields of electrical energy that persist for hours after it has moved on. Entei's presence raises ambient temperatures noticeably, causing snow to melt and water to evaporate even in the coldest environments. Each step it takes scorches the ground beneath its paws, leaving trails of burned earth that mark its passage. Legends describe Entei as a volcano given life, capable of erupting with the same catastrophic force, though it exercises restraint, understanding that unchecked power would devastate the landscapes it runs through. Its roar sounds like distant volcanic rumbles, deep and resonant enough to shake the ground. Suicune moves with the grace of flowing water, its mane rippling like a waterfall caught in eternal motion. Wherever it runs, water sources become purified, pollutants dissolving and clarity returning to even the most contaminated streams and lakes. Suicune's power over water extends to weather manipulation, able to summon rain or clear skies as needed, though it uses this ability sparingly. Of the three legendary beasts, Suicune seems most willing to reveal itself to humans, occasionally allowing brief glimpses before vanishing into mist. The bell tower stands opposite the burned tower, a structure that has survived centuries through careful maintenance and spiritual reverence. Multiple stories rise toward the sky, each level housing monks who dedicate their lives to contemplation and training. The tower's bells ring at specific times, their tones carrying across Ecruteak City and into the surrounding routes. Climbing the tower requires permission, granted only to trainers who have proven themselves worthy through demonstrations of respect and understanding. Ho-Oh once perched atop the bell tower, visible to all who looked toward the structure, a symbol of hope and renewal. After the burned tower's destruction, Ho-Oh departed, and its return became a matter of legend and prophecy. The Rainbow Wing, a sacred item said to resonate with Ho-Oh's energy, can summon the legendary Pokémon when held by a trainer pure of heart. Few trainers ever receive the opportunity to obtain this item, and fewer still possess the qualities necessary to call Ho-Oh from the skies. Ho-Oh embodies the concept of resurrection and renewal, its flames possessing the power to revive even those who have completely perished. The sacred fire burns without consuming, healing rather than destroying, creating rather than reducing to ash. Seeing Ho-Oh flying overhead is considered an omen of tremendous good fortune, a sign that positive change approaches. The rainbow that appears in its wake serves as a bridge between earth and sky, a physical manifestation of hope made visible. The fourth gym challenge awaits in Ecruteak City, where Morty presides as gym leader and guardian of the Fog Badge. His specialty lies with ghost-type Pokémon, creatures that exist between the physical and spiritual worlds, immune to normal attacks and capable of inflicting curses that persist long after battles end. Morty's signature Pokémon, Gengar, demonstrates mastery over Shadow and Nightmare, able to hide in darkness and strike from unexpected angles. Defeating Morty requires understanding that some opponents cannot be fought directly, that strategy must account for abilities that ignore conventional defenses. The Fog Badge shimmers with an almost ethereal quality, seeming to shift between solid and translucent, depending on the viewing angle. This badge grants trainers the ability to use surf outside of battle, allowing them to traverse water routes and reach areas previously inaccessible. More importantly, it represents victory over one of Johto's most mysterious gym leaders, a trainer whose connection to the spiritual realm gives him insights others cannot access. Route 38 extends westward from Ecruteak City, passing through areas where the boundary between civilization and wilderness blurs. Wild Pokémon here include Miltank, the same species Whitney uses in battle, and Tauros, aggressive normal types that charge at anything they perceive as threats. The route eventually leads to the coast, where Olivine City's lighthouse becomes visible from miles away, its beam cutting through darkness and fog to guide ships safely to harbor. Olivine City functions as Johto's primary port, where ships arrive daily carrying goods and passengers from distant regions. The scent of ocean salt permeates everything, and the sound of waves provides constant background noise. The lighthouse dominates the city's skyline, a tall structure painted in alternating bands of red and white, visible from incredible distances during both day and night. The lighthouse keeper's Ampharos provides the light, its tail shining with electrical energy bright enough to penetrate the thickest fog. The battle tower stood on the outskirts of Olivine City in later years, a facility where trainers test their skills against increasingly difficult opponents in structured matches. The tower's challenge differs from gym battles or Elite Four encounters, as it emphasizes endurance and adaptability, requiring trainers to win consecutive battles without healing between matches. Only the strongest trainers reach the tower's upper floors, where the most skilled opponents await with perfectly trained teams. The sixth gym challenge should await in Olivine City, but the gym leader, Jasmine, has temporarily abandoned her post to care for the sick Ampharos in the lighthouse. This Ampharos provides the light that guides ships to safety, and its illness has left the city in darkness during critical hours. Trainers must travel to Cianwood City to obtain medicine, a quest that requires crossing the ocean and navigating new challenges before they can earn their sixth badge. Route 40 connects to Olivine City through water, requiring trainers to teach their Pokémon the surf technique before they can proceed. The ocean stretches in all directions, waves rolling in consistent patterns, and flying-type Pokémon circle overhead, hunting for water-dwelling prey. Wild Pokémon encountered while surfing include Tentacool, jellyfish that drift with ocean currents, and Tentacruel, their evolved forms, which use their many tentacles to ensnare prey and defend their territory. The Whirl Islands rise from the ocean in a cluster, rocky outcroppings with cave systems that extend below sea level. Whirlpools surround these islands, creating dangerous currents that can pull unwary swimmers deep underwater. The caves inside require multiple techniques to navigate, including surf, strength, and whirlpool, limiting access to only the most prepared trainers. Deep within these caves, in chambers where the sound of crashing waves echoes endlessly, Lugia makes its home. Lugia chose isolation after the burned tower's destruction, seeking solitude in the depths where human contact remains minimal. The diving Pokémon possesses power equal to Ho-Oh's, capable of creating storms with a flap of its wings or calming raging seas with its presence. Unlike Ho-Oh, Lugia does not involve itself in human affairs, preferring to observe from distance and intervene only when absolutely necessary. Its psychic abilities allow it to sense disturbances across vast distances, giving it awareness of events throughout Johto and beyond. The Silver Wing serves as a key to Lugia's chamber, an item that resonates with the legendary Pokemon's energy and signals worthy intent to those who carry it. Obtaining the Silver Wing requires demonstrating dedication and purity of purpose, qualities that Lugia values above raw strength or battling ability. Trainers who reach Lugia's chamber and present the Silver Wing find themselves tested in ways that extend beyond simple combat, as Lugia evaluates character and intention before agreeing to join any trainer's team. Cianwood City sits on a distant island, isolated from mainland Johto by expanses of open ocean. The city's residents have adapted to island life, developing fishing techniques and building methods suited to the unique challenges of their environment. Rocky cliffs surround much of the island, creating natural barriers against storms and high waves. The city itself nestles in a sheltered bay where the water remains calmer, allowing for safe harbor and swimming areas. The Cianwood Gym houses the 5th Gym Challenge, where Chuck presides as gym leader and guardian of the Storm Badge. His specialty lies with fighting-type Pokémon, creatures that rely on physical strength and martial arts techniques in battle. Chuck himself trains alongside his Pokémon, maintaining a regimen of physical conditioning that pushes both human and Pokémon limits. His signature Pokémon, Poliwrath, demonstrates the effectiveness of combining water and fighting types, using powerful punches enhanced by water-based techniques. The Storm Badge depicts a clenched fist, symbolizing the strength and determination required to earn it. This badge grants trainers the ability to use Fly outside of battle, allowing instant travel between cities previously visited. More significantly, earning this badge means overcoming one of Johto's physically strongest gym leaders, a trainer whose dedication to martial arts excellence has made him legendary among fighting-type specialists. The pharmacy in Cianwood City provides the medicine needed to heal Jasmine's Ampharos, a special formula created specifically for treating the illness affecting electric-type Pokémon. Obtaining this medicine requires speaking with the pharmacist and explaining the situation in Olivine City. The medicine must be transported carefully, kept at specific temperatures to maintain its effectiveness, though game mechanics simplify this to simple possession and delivery. Route 41 stretches between Cianwood and Olivine cities, the same ocean passage traveled in reverse. Wild Pokémon encountered here include Mantine, flying-type fish that glide above the water's surface, and occasionally Chinchou, electric fish that glow in deeper waters. The journey back to Olivine City with the medicine allows trainers to reflect on how far they've traveled, the challenges overcome, and the bonds formed with their Pokémon partners. Delivering the medicine to Jasmine restores the lighthouse's beam and opens the path to the 6th gym challenge. Jasmine presides as gym leader and guardian of the Mineral Badge, specializing in Steel-type Pokémon, creatures with defensive capabilities that can frustrate opponents who rely on physical attacks. Her signature Pokémon, Steelix, represents the pinnacle of defensive battling, with armor-like skin that resists most attacks and strength capable of crushing boulders. Defeating Jasmine requires understanding that some battles cannot be won through direct assault, that patience and strategic thinking matter more than raw power. The Mineral Badge gleams like polished metal, its surface reflecting light in ways that seem almost liquid. This badge represents mastery over an element that many trainers overlook, recognition that defensive capabilities hold equal importance to offensive strength. Jasmine's quiet demeanor hides tremendous determination, and trainers who earn her badge have proven themselves capable of overcoming significant challenges. Route 42 winds through mountainous terrain between Ecruteak City and Mahogany Town, following paths carved by centuries of travelers. The elevation increases gradually, and the air grows thinner and cooler. Wild Pokémon here include Mareep and Fluffy, electric sheep whose wool stores increasingly powerful charges as they evolve. The route passes through Mount Mortar, a massive mountain with cave systems that house rare Pokémon in hidden areas accessible only to trainers with specific techniques. Mount Mortar's interior forms a labyrinth of passages and chambers, some filled with water that requires surf to cross, others blocked by boulders that only Pokémon capable of using strength can move. The mountain's depths extend far below ground level, creating a vertical maze that challenges even experienced explorers. Deep within Mount Mortar, in a chamber rarely visited, a Tyrogue can be found, a fighting-type Pokémon whose evolution depends on the balance between its attack and defense statistics during level up. Mahogany Town sits nestled in mountains, a small settlement where harsh winters create a culture of resilience and self-sufficiency. Traditional buildings, with steep roofs designed to shed snow-lined narrow streets, and the scent of wood smoke hangs in the cold air. The Lake of Rage lies north of town, a body of water fed by mountain streams where strange events have been occurring, disturbing the natural order and creating problems for local residents. The Lake of Rage has become home to a shiny Gyarados, a red-scaled variant driven to violent rage by something affecting the lake's ecosystem. This Gyarados attacks anything that approaches the water, its fury evident in every movement and roar. Investigating the source of this rage leads to the discovery of Team Rocket's hidden base, an underground facility where the organization conducts experiments involving sound waves designed to force Pokémon evolution. Team Rocket's presence in Johto represents an attempt to rebuild the criminal organization after its defeat in Kanto. 4 executives lead this effort: Proton, Petrol, Ariana, and Archer, each commanding groups of grunts and pursuing different schemes designed to generate revenue and recruit new members. Their operations in Mahogany Town focus on the Lake of Rage, where the evolution forcing machine has created the violent, shiny Gyarados as an unintended consequence of their experiments. The underground base extends beneath Mahogany Town's souvenir shop, a facade that allows Team Rocket members to move freely while maintaining the appearance of legitimate business. The base itself contains multiple levels, with security systems and locked doors protecting deeper areas where the evolution machine operates. Trainers who infiltrate this base must battle through numerous grunts and navigate security measures before confronting the executives responsible for the operation. Proton serves as one of Team Rocket's most ruthless executives, willing to harm Pokémon without hesitation in pursuit of the organization's goals. His specialty lies with poison-type Pokémon, creatures capable of inflicting lasting damage through toxic attacks and status conditions. Defeating Proton requires careful planning and status condition prevention, as his strategies rely heavily on poisoning opponents and waiting for the toxins to take effect. The evolution machine broadcasts its sound waves at frequencies that cause certain Pokémon to evolve prematurely, forcing transformations before they would naturally occur. This process creates Pokémon that are physically evolved but mentally underdeveloped, resulting in violent and unstable behavior. The machine's effects on the Lake of Rage's Magikarp population led to mass evolutions into Gyarados, overwhelming the lake's ecosystem and creating chaos. If you've been drifting along with this story, take a moment to let me know what time it is where you're listening from. Destroying the evolution machine and defeating the executives in Mahogany Town represents a significant blow to Team Rocket's operations in Johto, but the organization's leadership remains intact. The executives regroup and shift their focus to Goldenrod City, where they plan a more ambitious scheme involving the radio tower and an attempt to contact Giovanni, Team Rocket's original leader, who disappeared after his defeat in Kanto. The 7th gym challenge awaits in Mahogany Town, where Pryce presides as gym leader and guardian of the Glacier Badge. His specialty lies with Ice-type Pokémon, creatures that control cold and use it as both weapon and defense. Pryce's signature Pokémon, Piloswine, demonstrates the raw power of ice types, using powerful physical attacks enhanced by freezing effects. Defeating Pryce requires understanding that ice-type Pokémon often possess secondary weaknesses that can be exploited, that their strength in specific conditions can become vulnerability when circumstances change. The Glacier Badge forms a perfect snowflake when examined closely, each branch symmetrical and delicate. This badge represents mastery over one of Johto's most challenging gyms, recognition that the trainer has developed strategies capable of overcoming defensive ice-type tactics. Pryce himself carries a melancholic air, as if burdened by years of experience and losses that weigh on his spirit. Route 44 stretches between Mahogany Town and the Ice Path, following terrain that becomes increasingly hostile to travelers unprepared for extreme cold. Wild Pokémon here include Lickitung, normal types with prehensile tongues that can paralyze opponents, and Weepinbell, grass poison hybrids that hang from trees like living traps. The route passes through areas where snow remains year-round, creating ecosystems adapted to permanent winter conditions. The ice path cuts through a mountain using natural ice formations that have existed for thousands of years. The interior maintains temperatures well below freezing, creating conditions where ice never melts and new formations constantly grow. The path requires careful navigation, as ice floors offer no traction, causing trainers and Pokémon to slide uncontrollably unless they move with extreme caution. Puzzles involving sliding ice blocks must be solved to progress, adding mental challenges to the physical demands of traversing this frozen environment. Blackthorn City emerges on the far side of the ice path, the final major settlement before Victory Road and the Elite Four. The city maintains deep connections to dragon-type Pokémon, with multiple dragon trainers residing here and a gym dedicated to these powerful creatures. Traditional architecture dominates, and residents speak with reverence about dragons, treating them as noble beings worthy of respect and admiration. The Dragon's Den sits behind the Blackthorn Gym, accessible only to trainers who have proven themselves worthy by defeating the gym leader. Inside this sacred space, a small temple rises from the center of an underground lake, where the Dragon Fang can be obtained after answering questions about a trainer's philosophy and relationship with Pokémon. The elders who maintain this temple evaluate trainers carefully, ensuring that only those with proper respect and understanding gain access to the Dragon Fang. The eighth and final gym challenge awaits in Blackthorn City, where Clair presides as gym leader and guardian of the Rising Badge. Her specialty lies with dragon-type Pokémon, creatures of immense power and rarity that evolve slowly but become nearly unstoppable when fully developed. Clair's signature Pokémon, Kingdra, combines dragon and water types, creating a nearly perfect defensive combination with few exploitable weaknesses. Defeating Clair represents the culmination of a trainer's journey through Johto, proof that they possess the skills necessary to challenge the Elite Four. The Rising Badge depicts a dragon in flight, its wings spread wide and head raised proudly. This badge completes the set of 8 required to enter the Pokémon League, granting trainers permission to attempt Victory Road and face the Elite Four beyond. Earning this final badge means overcoming Johto's strongest gym leader, a trainer whose skill level approaches that of Elite Four members, making her gym a final test before the ultimate challenge. Route 45 descends from Blackthorn City toward New Bark Town, creating a connection that allows trainers to return to their starting point and reflect on how much they've grown. The route features steep cliffs that can be descended using ledges but cannot be climbed without extensive backtracking, creating a one-way path that emphasizes forward progress. Wild Pokémon here include Graveler, rock-ground types that evolve into Golem when traded, and Skarmory, steel-flying types with defensive capabilities that rival some legendary Pokémon. Victory Road stands as the final obstacle before the Pokémon League, a cave system that tests every skill a trainer has developed throughout their journey. The path requires Surf, Strength, Flash, and other techniques, ensuring that only trainers with complete teams and thorough preparation can navigate its passages. Wild Pokémon here include some of Johto's strongest species, creatures that present real threats even to experienced teams approaching the Elite Four. The cave's interior forms a complex three-dimensional maze, with passages that loop back on themselves and areas accessible only by falling through holes in upper floors. The darkness here feels absolute in sections where Flash cannot reach, creating an oppressive atmosphere that weighs on trainers who venture too deep without preparation. Boulders must be moved in specific sequences to create paths forward, puzzles that require both strength and planning to solve correctly. Silver appears throughout the journey as a rival whose philosophy about Pokémon training contrasts sharply with the protagonist's approach. He begins by stealing a Pokémon from Professor Elm's laboratory, choosing a starter with a type advantage over the protagonist's choice, demonstrating his belief that power alone determines success. His early battles reflect this philosophy, using strong Pokémon but lacking the deeper bonds that come from respect and partnership. Silver's encounters with the protagonist and losses to various trainers, particularly Lance, gradually shift his perspective. He begins to question whether raw power truly represents the best path to strength, whether treating Pokémon as mere tools limits their potential rather than maximizing it. His team evolves to reflect this changing understanding, with his Golbat eventually evolving into Crobat, a transformation that only occurs when a Golbat's happiness reaches high levels, indicating genuine bond between Pokémon and trainer. The final battle with Silver before the Elite Four takes place on Victory Road, where he acknowledges the protagonist's approach as valid and admits that his previous philosophy limited his growth as a trainer. His team has grown significantly stronger, not just in levels, but in the coordination and strategy evident in his battle tactics. Defeating Silver here represents not just victory over a rival, but proof that compassion and respect create stronger bonds than domination and force. Silver's backstory reveals him as the son of Giovanni, the former leader of Team Rocket, who disbanded the organization after his defeat in Kanto. This heritage creates internal conflict for Silver as he struggles against the reputation and expectations that come with being Giovanni's son. His journey mirrors the protagonist's in many ways, both seeking to prove themselves and overcome obstacles, though Silver's obstacles include escaping his father's shadow and defining himself outside of Team Rocket's legacy. The Elite Four Chamber sits beyond Victory Road, a massive structure built into the mountainside where Johto's strongest trainers gather to test challengers. The building's architecture emphasizes grandeur and permanence. Stone walls carved with images of legendary Pokémon and previous champions. Entry requires presenting all 8 gym badges, proof that the challenger has conquered every gym leader in Johto and earned the right to face the Elite Four. Will serves as the first Elite Four member, specializing in psychic-type Pokémon that use mental powers to control battles and predict opponents' actions. His signature Pokémon, Xatu, possesses the ability to see into the future, allowing it to anticipate attacks and counter them before they land. Defeating Will requires understanding that psychic types, despite their mental advantages, possess specific weaknesses that can be exploited by Dark-type or Bug-type Pokémon. Will's chamber features purple tones and dim lighting, creating an atmosphere that feels dreamlike and disorienting. Psychic energy permeates the space, and some trainers report feeling pressure on their minds, though whether this stems from actual psychic influence or simple nervousness remains unclear. Will's calm demeanor during battle contrasts with the intensity of his Pokemon's attacks, creating a disconcerting experience where the opponent's composure never wavers regardless of the battle's progress. Koga serves as the second Elite Four member, having been promoted from his position as Fuchsia City's gym leader in Kanto. His specialty lies with poison-type Pokémon, creatures that inflict damage over time through toxins and status conditions. Koga's signature Pokémon, Crobat, represents the evolution of the Golbat he used as a gym leader, demonstrating his growth as a trainer and his deepening bonds with his Pokémon partners. Koga's chamber maintains the ninja aesthetic that defined his gym, with screens and shadows is creating an environment where visibility remains limited. His battle style emphasizes patience and attrition, slowly wearing opponents down through poison and toxic effects, rather than overwhelming them with raw power. Defeating Koga requires either preventing status conditions entirely through held items or maintaining healing throughout the battle to counteract the accumulated toxic damage. Bruno serves as the third Elite Four member, specializing in fighting-type Pokémon that use raw physical strength and martial arts techniques. His signature Pokémon, Machamp, possesses 4 arms that can deliver devastating combinations of punches, each one powerful enough to shatter stone. Bruno's philosophy emphasizes discipline and training, believing that constant physical conditioning creates the strongest Pokémon and the strongest bonds between trainer and partner. Bruno's chamber features simple stone construction, lacking the elaborate decorations found in other Elite Four rooms. This minimalism reflects his philosophy that excess serves no purpose, that only strength and discipline matter in the pursuit of excellence. His battle style relies on overwhelming physical attacks that break through defensive strategies, forcing opponents to match his aggression or be crushed beneath it. Karen serves as the fourth and final Elite Four member, specializing in dark-type Pokémon that use cunning and dirty tactics to win battles. Her signature Pokémon, Houndoom, combines dark and fire types, creating a creature capable of inflicting both physical damage and psychological pressure through intimidation. Karen's philosophy emphasizes using whatever works, rejecting the notion that some strategies or tactics should be considered off limits. Karen's chamber bathes in shadow, with minimal lighting creating an environment where details remain difficult to distinguish. Her battle style embraces unpredictability, using moves and strategies that catch opponents off guard and punish those who rely too heavily on patterns or predictable approaches. Defeating Karen requires adaptability and willingness to adjust strategies mid-battle, recognizing when approaches aren't working and changing tactics before the situation becomes unrecoverable. Lance serves as Johto's Pokemon League champion, having maintained his position through countless challenges from trainers who conquered the Elite Four. His specialty lies with Dragon-type Pokemon, creatures of legendary power and rarity that few trainers ever successfully raise to competitive levels. Lance's signature Pokemon, Dragonite, represents the pinnacle of Dragon-type strength, combining powerful physical attacks with devastating special moves and enough speed to often attack before opponents can respond. Lance's chamber occupies the highest point in the league building, accessible only after defeating all 4 Elite Four members. The architecture here emphasizes majesty and authority, with tall ceilings and windows that look out over vast stretches of Johto. Lance himself carries himself with confidence earned through years of defending his title, greeting challengers with respect but no doubt about the outcome. Defeating Lance requires bringing together everything learned throughout the Johto journey, combining type advantages with strategic thinking, using items effectively, and maintaining composure under pressure. His team contains no obvious weaknesses, forcing challengers to find advantages through careful planning and flawless execution. Victory over Lance marks the completion of the Johto League Challenge, officially crowning the challenger as the new champion. The Hall of Fame immortalizes every trainer who defeats Lance, recording their team and marking them as Johto's champion. The ceremony that follows victory includes registration in the official league records, ensuring that the accomplishment receives permanent recognition. However, becoming champion doesn't end the journey, as new challenges await in unexpected places. Professor Oak appears after the champion ceremony, revealing that the Kanto region has opened its borders to Johto's new champion, inviting them to explore a second region and challenge a completely different set of gym leaders. This revelation transforms what seemed like an ending into a new beginning, doubling the available content and introducing challenges that test the limits of even the strongest teams. The SS Aqua provides transportation between Johto and Kanto, a massive ship that crosses the ocean between regions regularly. The journey takes time, during which trainers can battle crew members and passengers, earning experience and money while enjoying the ocean views from the ship's deck. The ship's interior contains multiple floors, including a captain's deck, where the ship's commander oversees operations. Arriving in Vermilion City marks entry into Kanto, a region that shares history with Johto, but maintains distinct culture and geography. The gym leaders here present new challenges, their teams stronger than what Johto's gym leaders fielded, reflecting the expectation that only experienced trainers will attempt Kanto's gyms. Lieutenant Surge, Sabrina, Erica, Janine, Brock, Misty, and Blaine all await challengers, each one a specialist in their respective types. Blue serves as Viridian City's gym leader, having taken over the position after Giovanni's disappearance. As the former champion of Kanto, who was defeated by Red, Blue brings championship-level skill to his gym, making him arguably the strongest gym leader in either region. His team lacks a specific type specialty, instead focusing on versatile, powerful Pokémon that cover each other's weaknesses, creating a balanced and dangerous combination. Collecting all 16 badges from both Johto and Kanto grants access to Mount Silver, a massive mountain that serves as the ultimate challenge for trainers seeking to test their absolute limits. The mountain's elevation creates extreme conditions, with thin air and freezing temperatures that affect both trainers and Pokémon. Wild Pokémon here include some of the strongest species available, creatures that have adapted to harsh conditions and present real threats even to teams that dominated the Elite Four. The path up Mount Silver requires climbing through multiple environmental zones, each one presenting unique challenges and requiring different approaches. The lower slopes feature forests and rocky terrain where visibility remains good and wild encounters happen frequently. The middle sections introduce snow and ice, reducing traction and creating navigation challenges. The upper reaches exist in permanent winter, with blizzard conditions that limit visibility and create disorientation. The summit of Mount Silver holds a surprise that transforms the entire journey's meaning, revealing why this mountain was sealed off to all but the strongest trainers. Red stands alone at the peak, the legendary trainer from Kanto who defeated Team Rocket, conquered the Pokémon League, and then disappeared into isolation. His presence here, training in solitude for years, has created a trainer whose skill level exceeds even Lance's championship abilities. Red's team represents the culmination of everything that can be achieved through dedicated training and perfect bonds with Pokémon. Each member has reached maximum potential, their levels surpassing anything encountered previously, their movesets optimized for coverage and power. Red himself doesn't speak, communicating only through battle, his silence adding to the intimidating atmosphere of facing Kanto's living legend. Defeating Red marks the true completion of the journey through Johto and Kanto, representing mastery over both regions and triumph over the greatest trainer either region has produced. The battle taxes even the most prepared teams, requiring perfect strategy execution and often multiple attempts before success. Victory brings no formal ceremony or recognition, just the knowledge that the pinnacle has been reached, that no greater challenge awaits. The Johto region's lore extends beyond gym challenges and Elite Four battles, encompassing a rich mythology that connects legendary Pokémon to ancient civilizations and cosmic forces. The Ruins of Alph suggest knowledge that predates modern understanding, hints of civilizations that possessed insights into Pokémon and reality itself that have since been lost. The unknown that inhabit these ruins represent living fragments of this lost knowledge, their collective consciousness maintaining information that individual humans cannot access. The relationship between Ho-Oh and Lugia forms a central pillar of Johto's mythology. Two legendary Pokémon representing complementary forces, sky and sea, creation and destruction, engagement with humanity versus withdrawal from it. Their presence in Johto's history shaped the region's development, with the Burned Tower's tragedy serving as a turning point that altered both legendaries' relationships with humans and created the three legendary beasts that now roam eternally. The Brass Tower and Bell Tower represent humanity's attempt to honor and connect with these legendary Pokémon, structures built with reverence and maintained through generations of dedication. The Brass Tower's destruction and the resulting consequences demonstrated the fragility of this connection, how quickly human efforts can be undone by natural forces or misfortune. The Bell Tower's survival represents hope and the possibility of rebuilding, of maintaining traditions even after tragedy. The legendary beasts embody the themes of death and rebirth that permeate Johto's mythology, creatures that died in flames and returned transformed into living embodiments of natural forces. Their endless roaming suggests a search for purpose or meaning that transcends simple existence, as if their resurrection came with questions they cannot answer or destinations they cannot reach. Trainers who encounter them often describe feelings of melancholy mixed with awe, sensing something profound in these creatures beyond their obvious power. Celebi's role in Johto's ecosystem extends beyond simple time travel, representing a guardian force that maintains balance across temporal boundaries. Its ability to move through time allows it to correct mistakes and prevent catastrophes before they fully manifest, though it operates under constraints that prevent constant intervention. The shrine in Ilex Forest serves as an anchor point that Celebi returns to regularly, maintaining a connection to the present moment even as it navigates past and future timelines. Team Rocket's operations in Johto reflect the organization's struggle to maintain relevance after Giovanni's disappearance and the defeat of their Kanto operations. The four executives leading the Johto branch represent different approaches to rebuilding, from Proton's ruthlessness to Archer's strategic thinking. Their ultimate failure demonstrates that organizations built on domination and exploitation cannot sustain themselves long term, that even tactical successes cannot overcome fundamental flaws in philosophy and approach. The journey through Johto represents more than a simple collection of badges and victories. It embodies a coming-of-age story where trainers develop from novices into masters through experience and reflection. Each gym leader teaches lessons that extend beyond type advantages and battle tactics, offering insights into different approaches to training and different philosophies about the relationships between humans and Pokémon. Faulkner's emphasis on precision and speed in battle reflects a broader philosophy about efficiency and grace, teaching that battles can be won through superior technique rather than overwhelming force. Bugsy's mastery of underestimated bug-type Pokémon demonstrates that perceived weakness can become strength when properly developed, that prejudice and assumptions limit understanding. Whitney's devastating normal-type strategies prove that simplicity does not equal weakness, that fundamental tactics executed perfectly can overcome more complex approaches. Morty's connection to ghost-type Pokémon and spiritual matters introduces concepts of existence beyond the purely physical, challenging trainers to consider that not everything can be explained through conventional understanding. Chuck's dedication to physical conditioning and fighting-type Pokémon emphasizes the value of discipline and hard work, demonstrating that natural talent means little without dedication to improvement. Jasmine's quiet confidence and steel-type mastery teach that defense can be as valid an approach as offense, that patient accumulation of small advantages can overcome apparent disadvantages in speed or power. Pryce's melancholic demeanor and ice-type specialty hint at deeper stories of loss and resilience, suggesting that strength can emerge from suffering when properly channeled. Clair's pride and dragon-type expertise represent the culmination of traditional training methods, demonstrating what can be achieved through dedication to a single type and philosophy. The Elite Four members each represent different approaches to reaching the highest levels of competitive training. Will's psychic specialty emphasizes mental discipline and the power of knowledge and prediction. Koga's poison tactics demonstrate that indirect approaches can be as effective as direct confrontation, that patience and strategy matter more than immediate results. Bruno's fighting-type philosophy celebrates physical excellence and the bonds formed through shared training and hardship. Karen's dark-type strategies embrace unconventional thinking and rejection of arbitrary limitations on acceptable tactics. Lance's role as champion represents the synthesis of all these approaches, a trainer who combines multiple philosophies into a cohesive whole while specializing in dragon types that embody power, rarity, and the rewards of dedicated long-term training. His position atop Johto's competitive hierarchy demonstrates what can be achieved through mastery and balance, inspiring trainers while providing a clear goal to strive toward. The revelation of Kanto's availability after becoming champion transforms the journey's scope, revealing that mastery of one region merely qualifies a trainer to begin truly challenging themselves. Kanto's gym leaders present familiar faces with evolved teams and new strategies, forcing champions to adapt and continue growing rather than resting on their accomplishments. Blue's role as Viridian City's gym leader represents a fallen champion who found new purpose in teaching and testing others, demonstrating that defeat doesn't end a trainer's journey, but merely redirects it. His balanced team without type specialty reflects lessons learned from his own championship run and subsequent loss, showing adaptation and growth beyond his original approach. The journey to Mount Silver represents a pilgrimage to face the ultimate challenge, seeking out the legendary Red, not for badges or titles, but for personal growth and the knowledge that comes from testing oneself against the absolute best. The mountain's harsh conditions create a final filter, ensuring that only the most determined trainers reach the summit, that only those willing to endure hardship for the sake of the challenge itself will face Red. Red's silence during battle creates space for trainers to project their own meaning onto the encounter, to interpret the battle as whatever they need it to be: a final exam, a passing of the torch, a pure test of skill without external meaning. His team's overwhelming strength forces trainers to bring their absolute best, to execute flawlessly and capitalize on every small advantage, teaching lessons about perfection and the margins that separate good trainers from legendary ones. The Johto region's geography creates a natural progression of challenges, with each new area introducing environmental hazards or navigation obstacles that require newly acquired techniques to overcome. Routes blocked by trees teach the value of cut. Waterways impassable without surf emphasize the need for versatile teams, and caves too dark to navigate without flash demonstrate that some obstacles cannot be overcome through battle alone. The decision to connect Johto directly to Kanto creates a unique regional relationship, two areas sharing history and proximity but maintaining distinct identities and cultures. This connection allows for story elements that span both regions, such as Team Rocket's operations affecting both areas and the legendary Pokémon whose influence extends across regional boundaries. The presence of Kanto's original gym leaders in evolved roles shows the passage of time and the ongoing development of the Pokémon world, reminding players that these regions exist as living places where events continue even when not directly observed. Koga's promotion to the Elite Four creates an opening for his daughter Janine to take over Fuchsia City's gym, demonstrating generational progression and the continuation of training traditions. The time travel mechanics associated with Celebi introduce complex narrative possibilities, allowing trainers to witness events from Johto's past and interact with Pokémon and characters from different eras. These encounters add depth to the region's lore, revealing information about historical events and their consequences that shapes understanding of the present. The forced evolution experiments conducted by Team Rocket in Mahogany Town demonstrate the dangers of attempting to control natural processes through technology without understanding the full consequences. The violent Gyarados created by these experiments serve as warnings about the risks of prioritizing efficiency and profit over natural development and Pokémon welfare. The evolution-dependent transformations of certain Pokémon, particularly those requiring specific conditions like happiness or trade or special items, teach lessons about the complexity of Pokémon development and the importance of proper care and training. Silver's Golbat evolving into Crobat specifically demonstrates that treating Pokémon with respect and building genuine bonds creates outcomes that force and domination cannot achieve. The day-slash-night cycle introduces temporal elements to gameplay, with certain Pokemon appearing only during specific times and events triggering based on time of day. This cycle creates rhythms that mirror natural patterns, encouraging players to experience the region at different times and observe how both wild Pokemon behavior and human activity shift between day and night. The introduction of breeding mechanics through the daycare facility adds new dimensions to team building and Pokemon collection, allowing trainers to produce specific combinations of moves and abilities through careful parent selection. This system rewards planning and patience, as breeding optimal Pokemon requires multiple generations and careful tracking of inherited traits. The held item system introduces strategic depth to battles, allowing Pokemon to carry items that activate during combat and provide benefits ranging from healing to stat boosts to type protection. Choosing appropriate held items becomes part of team preparation, requiring understanding of both the Pokemon's strengths and the likely challenges they'll face. The Pokegear serves as a multifunctional tool that enhances the trainer's journey, providing radio functionality that accesses various stations, including Professor Oak's Pokemon Talk, music programs, and news broadcasts. The phone feature allows trainers to register contacts who call periodically to chat or arrange rematches, creating a sense of ongoing relationships with characters encountered throughout the journey. The radio card unlocked through story progression enables access to additional stations, including one that plays the Pokeflute music that can wake sleeping Pokemon blocking certain paths. This integration of radio functionality into puzzle solving demonstrates how tools can serve multiple purposes beyond their obvious primary functions. The Johto region's design philosophy emphasizes exploration and discovery, with hidden areas and secrets that reward thorough investigation and creative problem solving. Optional caves and routes contain rare Pokemon and valuable items, encouraging trainers to deviate from the main path and explore areas that contribute nothing to gym badge progression but enrich the overall experience. The game's color palette and visual design reflect the advancement from Game Boy to Game Boy Color, with Johto's environments featuring more varied and vibrant colors than Kanto's original presentation. This visual richness enhances the sense of place, making each city and route feel distinct through color associations and environmental details. The music composition throughout Johto creates memorable themes that enhance emotional connection to specific locations and events. The haunting melody of Ecruteak City evokes ancient history and spiritual significance, while the energetic theme of Goldenrod City reflects urban vitality and constant motion. These musical choices create atmosphere that reinforces the themes and feeling of each area. The special encounters with legendary Pokemon require preparation and persistence, testing trainers' ability to plan ahead and execute strategies that account for opponents with overwhelming power and unpredictable movesets. Capturing these legendaries represents achievements that extend beyond simple completion, requiring dedication that goes beyond what the main story demands. The roaming legendary beasts present unique challenges, as tracking them across Johto requires patience and careful monitoring of their random movements. The frustration of encountering them only to have them flee immediately teaches lessons about preparation and the value of tools like Mean Look or blocks that prevent escape. The post-game content extends gameplay significantly beyond the initial champion victory, providing challenges that test fully developed teams and reward continued engagement with the game. The availability of Kanto creates a second complete adventure, effectively doubling the content available to players who complete Johto's main story. The integration of Pokemon from both Kanto and Johto creates a diverse ecosystem with nearly 250 species available for capture and training, allowing for team compositions that were impossible in the original games. This diversity encourages experimentation and multiple playthroughs using different combinations and strategies. The friendship and happiness mechanics add invisible statistics that affect certain evolutions and move effectiveness, rewarding trainers who take good care of their Pokemon through healing, avoiding fainting, and using items that increase happiness. These mechanics create incentives for maintaining Pokemon welfare beyond simple battle effectiveness. The introduction of Dark and Steel types adds new dimensions to the type effectiveness system, creating additional strategic considerations and new options for building balanced teams. Dark type Pokemon provide counters to the previously dominant Psychic types, while Steel types offer defensive capabilities that resist numerous attacking types. The special split in move categorization means that a move's physical or special nature depends on its type rather than the individual move, creating some counterintuitive situations where physically strong Pokemon struggle to effectively use certain types due to special attack requirements. The removal of held items when Pokemon are stored in the PC prevents certain exploitative strategies while creating logistical challenges for trainers managing large collections and swapping team members regularly. This design choice emphasizes the importance of planning team composition before entering challenging areas. The time-based evolution requirements for certain Pokemon, particularly Eevee's evolutions into Espeon or Umbreon based on happiness and time of day, add complexity to team planning and reward players who understand the various evolution mechanics at play. The weekly events and tied to specific days create reasons to engage with the game across multiple real-world days, with the bug-catching contest on Tuesdays and Thursdays providing regular opportunities to compete for prizes and catch rare bug-type Pokemon. The Pokeathlon in later versions adds competitive minigames that test Pokemon abilities those outside of traditional battles, creating alternative ways to engage with collected Pokemon and showcasing attributes that rarely matter in combat situations. The Battle Frontier in later versions provides extreme post-game challenges with unique rule sets that require different approaches to team building and strategy, testing mastery of various battle formats and preventing any single dominant strategy from succeeding universally. The Johto Safari Zone in later versions offers a customizable area where trainers can create environments that attract specific Pokemon types, adding a collection element that rewards long-term investment and careful planning regarding which Pokemon to prioritize attracting. The photographic quests involving capturing images of specific Pokemon in certain poses or locations add collection challenges that extend beyond simple capture, rewarding observation and patience while creating mementos of notable encounters. The integration with Pokemon Stadium and other console games allows for additional battle formats and storage options, extending the value of collected and trained Pokemon beyond the handheld games themselves. The mystery gift feature enables special distribution events where unique Pokemon or items can be obtained, creating incentives to participate in official events and rewarding players who engage with the broader Pokemon community. The ongoing compatibility with earlier generation games through trading ensures that Pokemon from Kanto can be transferred to Johto, maintaining value for collections built in previous games and allowing for team compositions that span multiple generations. The limitations on backward compatibility with future generations eventually create cutoff points where certain Pokemon become trapped in earlier hardware, unable to be transferred forward, though these limitations stem from technical constraints rather than intentional design. The Johto region's enduring popularity among fans stems partly from its role as the first sequel region, introducing the concept that Pokemon games could expand beyond a single region and creating expectations for future games to include post-game regions or connectivity between areas. The character of Silver represents one of the more complex rival characters in the series, with a clear character arc that shows genuine growth and change rather than static antagonism. His transformation from theft and cruelty to understanding and partnership demonstrates that even characters who begin on dark paths can find redemption through experience and reflection. The mystery surrounding Silver's parentage and his connection to Giovanni adds depth to his character without requiring explicit confirmation, allowing players to interpret his background and motivations through context clues and implications rather than direct exposition. The post-game encounters with Red on Mount Silver create one of the most memorable challenges in the entire Pokémon series, a battle that requires no introduction or build-up, simply presenting the ultimate test for trainers who have conquered everything else both regions offer. The silence of this encounter adds weight to its significance, creating a moment where gameplay speaks louder than any dialogue could, where the battle itself communicates everything necessary about the challenge and what defeating it represents. The legend of Red's isolation and training creates mythological status around a character who appears only briefly, but leaves lasting impressions through sheer impact, demonstrating that sometimes less characterization creates more powerful legends than elaborate backstories would provide. The design of Johto emphasizes backtracking and interconnection, with later acquired abilities opening access to previously visible but unreachable areas, rewarding players who remember blocked paths and return to explore them once they have the necessary techniques. The placement of rare items and powerful Pokémon in these hidden areas creates incentives for thorough exploration and rewards players who take initiative to investigate every corner of the map rather than simply following the main path between gyms. The environmental storytelling throughout Johto, from the burned ruins of the Brass Tower to the thriving ecosystem of Ilex Forest, creates narrative depth without requiring explicit exposition, allowing players to construct their own understanding of events through observation and inference. The regional variance in culture and architecture between different Johto cities reflect real-world diversity and create distinct identities for each settlement, preventing the homogenization that could result from treating all locations as functionally identical way stations between challenges. The integration of traditional Japanese aesthetics in Johto's design creates cultural specificity that distinguishes it from Kanto's more modern industrial feel, though both regions draw from Japanese geography and culture in different ways that reflect the diversity within Japan itself. The accessibility improvements in later remakes, including updated graphics, improved menu systems, and quality of life features like running shoes from the start, demonstrate how the core Johto experience can be enhanced without fundamentally altering the region's identity or challenge structure. The addition of the Pokewalker peripheral in Heart Gold and Soul Silver creates new ways to engage with captured Pokémon outside the main game, allowing players to earn experience and find items through real-world walking activity, gamifying exercise and encouraging physical activity. The following Pokémon feature in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where the lead party member walks behind the trainer character on the overworld map, adds personality and visual variety while creating stronger emotional connections to team members through constant visible companionship. The expansion of characterization for gym leaders and other key figures in the remakes through additional dialogue and post-game events enriches the world and creates a sense that these characters have lives and concerns beyond their roles in the trainer's journey. The Johto region's place in Pokémon history as the second generation establishes patterns and expectations that influence future games, including the concept of new types being added to expand strategic options and the inclusion of time-based mechanics that create reasons to play at different hours. The decision to maintain connectivity between Johto and Kanto creates precedent for later games to include multiple regions, though few sequels match the ambition of including an entire second region as post-game content, making Johto's implementation particularly noteworthy. The balance between honoring tradition and introducing innovation defines Johto's approach, preserving elements that worked in Kanto while adding new features that expand possibilities without overwhelming players with complexity or abandoning the core gameplay that made the original successful. The Johto starter Pokémon have achieved lasting popularity that rivals or exceeds the iconic Kanto starters, with Typhlosion, Feraligatr, and Meganium developing devoted fan bases and appearing prominently in merchandise and promotional materials. The legendary Pokémon introduced in Johto, particularly Lugia and Ho-Oh, have become central figures in the broader Pokémon mythology, appearing across multiple media including movies, trading cards, and later games that reference or include them. The legendary beast's roaming mechanic introduces a hunt element that creates memorable experiences through frustration and eventual success, though later games would refine this mechanic to reduce the pure randomness that could make encounters feel more like luck than achievement. The mystery and limited information about certain Pokémon, particularly Celebi, creates intrigue and encourages community collaboration to discover secrets and unlock encounters that aren't explicitly guided by the main story. The connection between game mechanics and lore, such as happiness-based evolutions representing genuine bonds between trainer and Pokémon, creates thematic coherence, where gameplay systems reinforce narrative themes rather than existing as separate, unrelated elements. The Johto region's geography creates natural barriers that guide progression while allowing for some sequence breaking and alternative routes, supporting both casual players who follow obvious paths and experienced players who seek optimal or unusual approaches. The distribution of type specialists across gym leaders creates an educational progression where players encounter increasingly complex type matchups and learn to build teams that cover multiple weaknesses rather than relying on single powerful Pokémon. The post-game challenges in Kanto deliberately increase difficulty beyond the main story, rewarding players who seek additional content with genuine challenges rather than simply repeating previous experiences at slightly higher levels. The presence of familiar locations from the original Kanto games creates nostalgia while showing how these places have changed in the intervening time, adding temporal depth to the world and suggesting that the Pokémon universe continues developing even between player experiences. The changes to Kanto's gyms and leaders demonstrate that the Pokémon world responds to events, with some leaders moving to new positions and new trainers taking over vacated gyms, creating a sense of living continuity rather than static repetition. The encounter with Red specifically references the player character from the original games, creating metatextual connections that reward longtime fans while remaining accessible to new players who simply experience him as an exceptionally powerful trainer. The mountain location and isolation for this encounter mirrors Red's character as presented in other media, a silent protagonist who speaks through actions rather than words, creating consistency across different interpretations while leaving room for individual player interpretation. The Team Red uses reflects common player choices from the original games while being optimized for competitive challenge, creating an opponent that feels like facing an idealized version of one's former self from Kanto. The inclusion of Pikachu on Red's team specifically references the anime's protagonist, creating cross-media connections while giving this encounter additional emotional weight for fans familiar with both game and anime continuities. The extreme level curve for Red's team creates a genuine challenge that requires grinding and preparation, marking this as content intended for dedicated players rather than casual completion, respecting both audiences by making the encounter optional but rewarding. The lack of healing spots immediately before Red creates additional challenge and forces players to either come heavily prepared or use escape ropes and return, adding strategic planning elements beyond the battle itself. The weather conditions on Mount Silver during the climb and battle create atmosphere that enhances the encounter's memorability, making the location as much a character as Red himself through environmental storytelling. The decision to place the ultimate challenge outside the traditional gym and Elite Four structure demonstrates that the most meaningful tests don't always come from official institutions, that personal achievement can exceed formal recognition. The finality of defeating Red creates closure for both the Johto and Kanto storylines, providing a definitive endpoint that marks complete mastery of both regions and everything they offer. The optional nature of this encounter respects players who feel satisfied after becoming champion, creating content for those who want more without requiring everyone to engage with extreme post-game challenges. The Johto region's contribution to Pokemon's ongoing success extends beyond a single generation, establishing mechanics and expectations that influence how future games approach sequels, connectivity, and the balance between new and returning content. The relatively smaller Pokemon roster compared to later generations creates an environment where each species receives more individual attention and characterization, though this advantage diminishes as each generation adds hundreds of new creatures. The focus on days/night cycles and time-based events establishes temporal mechanics that become standard in future games, creating worlds that change based on when players engage with them rather than existing in perpetual stasis. The battery-based clock system creates technical limitations that eventually fail as hardware ages, though later versions address this through different timing mechanisms that don't rely on aging batteries. The regional Pokédex concept helps manage the overwhelming number of available species, creating focused collections that players can reasonably complete while acknowledging that capturing every existing Pokémon represents an extreme challenge. The distribution of legendary Pokémon creates tiers of rarity and achievement, with roaming legends requiring different strategies than static encounters, and event-exclusive Pokémon creating ultimate rarities that most players never legitimately obtain. The balance between challenging veteran players and remaining accessible to newcomers defines Johto's difficulty curve, starting gentle enough for first-time players while including optional challenges that test even experienced trainers. The quality of life improvements in later versions, particularly Heart Gold and Soul Silver, demonstrate how classic experiences can be updated for modern audiences without sacrificing the elements that made them beloved originally. The soundtrack's memorability and emotional resonance contributes significantly to Johto's lasting impact, with music that evokes specific locations and moments even years after last playing, demonstrating the power of audio design in creating immersive experiences. The visual design of Pokémon introduced in Johto maintains consistency with Kanto's aesthetic while introducing new biological niches and concepts, creating creatures that feel like natural extensions of the existing world rather than jarring additions from completely different design philosophies. The baby Pokémon introduced through breeding add cute pre-evolutions to existing species, creating new collection goals while retroactively adding depth to familiar Pokémon by showing their juvenile forms. The gender mechanics introduced in Johto add new dimensions to Pokémon identity and breeding mechanics, though also creating situations where gender-exclusive evolutions limit flexibility in team building. The shiny Pokémon variant system creates ultra-rare collection goals that appeal to dedicated players willing to invest hours in hunting specific colorations, though the extreme rarity means most players never encounter shinies outside scripted events. The Pokerus mechanic adds invisible stat benefits that create another layer of optimization for competitive players while remaining completely optional for casual enjoyment, demonstrating how deep systems can coexist with accessible surface gameplay. The decision to maintain backward compatibility with link cable trading ensures that multiplayer and trading ecosystems established in Kanto continue functioning with Johto, preserving the social elements that define much of Pokemon's appeal. The competitive metagame that emerges from Johto's mechanics creates communities of players who engage with Pokemon as competitive battling systems rather than simple collection games, supporting diverse playstyles within a single framework. The ongoing relevance of Johto Pokemon in competitive play across subsequent generations demonstrates successful game balance and design, creating creatures that remain viable even as hundreds of new options become available. The storytelling approach in Johto emphasizes environmental narrative and player driven discovery over extensive cutscenes or dialogue, trusting players to engage with the world and construct meaning from their experiences rather than having everything explicitly explained. The balance between linearity and exploration creates structure that guides players while rewarding deviation and investigation, preventing both complete aimlessness and stifling restriction of player agency. The pacing of gym challenges spaces them appropriately to allow for exploration and leveling between major battles, preventing both the frustration of being underprepared and the boredom of overleveling through excessive grinding. The distribution of Pokemon types across different routes and areas creates distinct ecosystems that feel logical within the world, while ensuring that players have access to diverse options for team building, regardless of which paths they take. The availability of multiple fishing rods at different progression points gates access to certain water-type Pokemon, while creating reasons to return to previously visited areas with upgraded equipment. The decision to include all three legendary beasts as capturable creates completionist goals, while respecting that some players may prefer to focus on one or two rather than demanding engagement with all three. The existence of version-exclusive Pokemon encourages trading and social interaction, though also creates frustration for solo players unable to complete their Pokédex without external assistance or multiple game copies. The Crystal Versions editions, particularly the Battle Tower and expanded story content focusing on the legendary beasts and Suicune specifically, demonstrate how third versions can enhance core experiences without making earlier versions obsolete. The female protagonist option, introduced in Crystal, represents early steps toward greater player representation, though the implementation remains limited compared to later games' more comprehensive customization options. The architecture throughout Johto reflects centuries of accumulated tradition, with building techniques passed down through generations of craftspeople who understood how to work with local materials and environmental conditions. The wooden structures in Ecruteak City specifically demonstrate joinery methods that require no nails or modern fasteners, relying instead on precisely cut, interlocking pieces that gain strength through compression and proper weight distribution. These buildings sway during earthquakes rather than resisting rigidly, allowing them to survive seismic events that would destroy more modern construction. The relationship between humans and Pokemon in Johto extends beyond simple partnership in battle, encompassing economic relationships where Pokemon labor contributes to industries and agriculture. Miltank dairy production supports farming communities, while Machop and Machoke provide construction labor that would otherwise require heavy machinery. These working relationships create dependencies that shape regional economics and social structures, making Pokemon welfare a practical concern beyond ethical considerations. The religious and spiritual traditions visible in Johto, particularly the monks who train in the Sprout Tower and Bell Tower, suggest belief systems that integrate Pokemon into spiritual practice rather than treating them as separate from human religious experience. The reverence shown to legendary Pokemon like Ho-Oh and Lugia indicates that some Johto residents view these creatures as divine or semi-divine entities, worthy of worship or at least profound respect. The Slowpoke Well tradition in Azalea Town demonstrates how folklore and practical concerns intersect, with the belief that Slowpoke bring fortune to the town, creating genuine economic value through tourism and local pride, regardless of whether the Slowpoke actually possess any fortune-granting abilities. This intersection of belief and material reality shows how cultural narratives shape community identity and behavior. The ruins scattered throughout Johto, from the ruins of Alph to the burned tower, create a sense of deep history extending far beyond the game's immediate time frame. These structures suggest that Johto has experienced cycles of civilization and decline, that current settlements exist on foundations built by previous cultures that rose and fell according to patterns that may repeat in future ages. The presence of unknown in the ruins of Alph specifically suggests that these ancient peoples possessed knowledge of Pokémon that modern trainers have lost, that their relationship with these mysterious creatures involved purposes beyond simple capture and battle. The symbols covering the ruins might represent an attempt to communicate with or control unknown, or possibly to record knowledge using the Pokémon themselves as living text. The environmental diversity across Johto, from the dense forests of Ilex to the frozen passages of Ice Path to the volcanic activity suggested by the hot springs in various locations, creates microclimates and ecosystems that support Pokémon species adapted to wildly different conditions within a relatively compact geographic area. This diversity reflects real-world biodiversity hotspots where geographic features create barriers that allow isolated evolution and specialization. The migration patterns of certain Pokémon species through Johto create seasonal changes, in which creatures can be encountered in specific locations, though these patterns are simplified in game mechanics compared to realistic animal migrations. The presence of migratory species suggests continental or global ecosystems where Johto represents one stopping point in larger movement patterns driven by breeding, feeding, or environmental pressures. The evolution of certain Pokémon through trade specifically creates interesting questions about what exactly happens during the trading process that triggers transformation. The physical separation and reunion, the exchange of ownership and the psychic bond reforming with the new trainer, some property of the trading technology itself? These questions remain unanswered, leaving room for speculation about the deeper mechanics of Pokémon biology and consciousness. The held item system's integration into Pokémon biology raises questions about how creatures as diverse as Pikachu and Steelix both benefit from holding berries or other items. Do they grip items in their mouths, paws, or some other appendage? How does a Magikarp hold anything? The game mechanics necessarily abstract these physical realities, but imagining the actual implementation creates amusing mental images. The Pokémon storage system's ability to convert living creatures into data and back without apparent harm or degradation suggests technology that far exceeds current understanding of consciousness, biology, and information theory. The casual treatment of this miraculous technology in-universe indicates either that the Pokémon world's scientific advancement exceeds ours in specific areas, or that Pokémon possess properties that make such conversion feasible where it would be impossible with Earth organisms. The relationship between Professor Elm and Professor Oak demonstrates scientific collaboration and mentorship spanning regions, with Oak serving as an established authority who supports younger researchers like Elm in their work. The Pokédex project specifically requires this kind of collaboration, as comprehensive data collection across multiple regions demands coordination between researchers with different specializations and geographic focuses. The upgrade from Kanto's original Pokédex to Johto's version demonstrates technological improvement and expanded capacity, though the fundamental concept of a portable device that identifies and catalogs every Pokémon species while providing detailed information about their biology and behavior represents remarkable engineering, regardless of which version one examines. The concept of Pokémon professors dedicating their lives to research rather than pursuing competitive battling creates a scientific establishment that supports trainers while maintaining separate goals and metrics for success. Professor Elm's focus on breeding and evolution specifically fills a different niche than Professor Oak's broader Pokedex research, suggesting specialized subdisciplines within Pokemon studies. The existence of the Pokemon League as an official institution with standardized rules, gym leader appointments, and Elite Four positions indicates governmental or organizational structure that spans regions and maintains consistency in how competitive battling is organized and regulated. This structure ensures that gym badges earned in one location carry meaning elsewhere, and that league victories represent standardized achievements rather than arbitrary local competitions. The decision to allow trainers as young as 10 or 11 to embark on journeys carrying powerful creatures and facing real dangers reflects a culture that values independence and experience based education over prolonged childhood protection. This cultural norm raises questions about education systems, parental rights, and social safety nets in a world where children routinely travel alone through wilderness areas. The apparent absence of significant predation of humans by Pokemon, despite the presence of creatures capable of creating earthquakes, breathing fire, or generating electrical discharges that could easily kill people, suggests either that Pokemon possess inherent restraint, or that the partnership between humans and Pokemon has created cultural norms among Pokemon themselves that prevent such predation except in extraordinary circumstances. The wild Pokemon attack behavior, where creatures initiate battles with trainers passing through their territories, might represent a territorial defense, curiosity, or testing behavior rather than genuine attempts to harm humans. The fact that these battles rarely result in serious injury to either trainer or Pokemon suggests ritualized combat with implied rules that both sides understand and respect. The economic systems as visible in Johto, from Pokemon centers offering free healing to shops selling items at standardized prices, regardless of location, suggest either heavy government subsidy or economic models that differ fundamentally from capitalist frameworks familiar in the real world. The absence of visible poverty or homelessness in Johto's cities indicates either effective social safety nets or selective representation that ignores unpleasant realities. The technology level across Johto varies dramatically, with some areas featuring advanced computers and digital networks, while others maintain traditional lifestyles with minimal modern technology. This inconsistency might reflect cultural choices about which technologies to adopt, with communities like Ecruteak deliberately preserving traditional ways while Goldenrod embraces modernity. The integration of Pokemon abilities into daily life, using Pokemon moves like Cut and Surf to navigate terrain or remove obstacles, creates a world where human capability is enhanced through partnership rather than replaced by machines. This integration suggests that technological development in the Pokemon world follows different paths than in our reality, with living creatures serving roles that machines fill in our world. The Move Tutor system's existence raises questions about whether Pokemon moves represent learned skills that can be taught or innate abilities that can only be unlocked through proper instruction. If moves can be taught by humans, this suggests deep understanding of Pokemon biology and neurology. If moves must be awakened rather than truly taught, this implies that Pokemon possess latent potential that requires external triggers to manifest. The TM and HM systems treatment as technological items that teach moves through some unclear mechanism represents another case where game mechanics simplify complex processes. The distinction between TMs that break after single use and HMs that can be used infinitely suggests different underlying technologies, or that HM moves are simpler and more fundamental than the specialized techniques recorded on TMs. The inheritance of moves through breeding creates interesting questions about whether genetic memory exists in Pokemon, allowing offspring to be born with knowledge of techniques their parents mastered. The alternative explanation that parents teach eggs or newly hatched Pokemon before trainers take possession seems implausible given the immediate availability of egg moves upon hatching. The Pokemon Day care's ability to produce eggs from compatible species raises questions about Pokemon reproduction and whether eggs represent literal eggs or some other developmental stage that happens to be egg-shaped. The mystery of where exactly these eggs come from, given that the daycare operator claims not to know how they appeared, adds humor while avoiding explicit discussion of Pokemon breeding mechanics. The friendship evolution mechanic creates gameplay that encourages treating Pokemon well, creating alignment between mechanical optimization and ethical treatment. This design choice suggests the developers wanted to reward players who care for their Pokemon beyond simply maximizing battle statistics, creating incentives for role-playing behavior that treats Pokemon as companions rather than tools. The Pokeris status effects rarity and beneficial effects create one of the game's true hidden treasures, something most players never encounter naturally, but that provides significant advantages for those lucky or persistent enough to obtain it. The virus metaphor creates interesting implications about Pokemon biology and whether they can suffer from diseases, and if so, why Pokeris is the only one players ever encounter. The berry system's integration into held items and the Pokeathlon creates a gathering and cultivation minigame that rewards players who invest time in exploring routes and checking berry trees regularly. This system provides renewable resources that eliminate the need to constantly purchase certain items, rewarding long-term planning and patience. The Apricorn system introduced in Johto creates specialized Pokeballs with unique capture mechanics, offering alternatives to the standard balls sold in shops. Kurt's craftsmanship in converting apricorns into balls suggests traditional skills that predate modern manufacturing, creating balls through methods that have been passed down through generations of Pokeball makers. The variety of Pokeball designs and their different capture rates and special effects creates strategic depth in deciding which ball to use for specific Pokemon, though the ultimate limitation of carrying capacity means that most players rely primarily on whichever ball types they've accumulated in largest quantities. The Master Ball's guaranteed capture creates an interesting dilemma for players who possess only one, forcing a decision about which Pokemon deserves this precious resource. The typical choice involves legendary Pokemon, though some players save it for shinies encountered unexpectedly, while others never use it at all, hoarding it indefinitely out of indecision. The Pokemon contest mechanics introduced in later versions create alternative ways to engage with Pokemon beyond battling, rewarding aesthetic qualities and performance abilities rather than pure combat strength. These contests demonstrate that Pokemon training encompasses multiple disciplines, and that success can be measured through various metrics rather than only battle victories. The medals and achievement systems added in later versions provide completionist goals that encourage exploring every aspect of the game rather than focusing exclusively on the main story and competitive battling. These systems formalize what dedicated players already did, tracking accomplishments and providing recognition for thorough engagement. The connectivity between Johto games and Pokemon Stadium titles creates additional battle formats and mini-games while allowing 3D viewing of Pokemon stored in handheld cartridges. This cross-platform integration demonstrates Nintendo's ecosystem approach, where different devices and games interoperate to create more value than either could provide independently. The mystery gift features reliance on infrared communication or wireless connectivity, enables distribution of special Pokemon and items during official events, creating real-world gathering incentives that strengthen community bonds and reward players who participate in organized Pokemon activities. The global trade network, enabled by later online connectivity, transforms trading from purely local interactions to worldwide exchanges, dramatically expanding the pool of potential partners and making previously impossible trades routine. This connectivity also introduces new risks from cheating and hacked Pokemon, creating ongoing challenges for maintaining competitive integrity. The integration of real world time into gameplay creates the possibility of missing time limited events, a design choice that creates urgency and scarcity, but also excludes players unable to play during specific windows. Later games would struggle with balancing this tension between meaningful time based mechanics and accessibility. The Pokewalker Peripheral's step counting functionality gamifies exercise by tying physical activity to in game rewards, creating health benefits alongside entertainment value. This innovation demonstrates how games can encourage behaviors beyond simple screen time, though the requirement to carry an additional device limited adoption. The Pokemon following feature's popularity demonstrates that players value visible companionship and personality expression, making its removal in later games a frequent source of disappointment. The feature's return in subsequent titles indicates that developers recognized its importance to player experience despite the technical challenges of animating hundreds of different Pokemon species. The expansion of character customization options across later games responds to player desires for greater self expression and representation, allowing players to create avatars that better reflect their identities. Johto's limited options in this regard reflect both technical constraints and design philosophies that prioritized other features. The voice acting added in later adaptations creates additional characterization for major figures while maintaining the silent protagonist tradition that allows players to project themselves into the main character role. This balance between giving NPCs personality and preserving player agency remains a central tension in Pokemon game design. The anime's interpretation of Johto introduces characters and storylines that expand beyond the games while maintaining core locations and concepts. Ash's journey through Johto provides an alternative narrative that explores the region from a different perspective, introducing Pokemon in situations that the games only hint at or omit entirely. The manga adaptations of Johto's story take even more dramatic liberties, creating darker narratives with higher stakes and more complex character relationships. These versions explore themes and conflicts that the games handle more subtly, demonstrating how the same core setting can support vastly different stories, depending on medium and target audience. The trading card game's representation of Johto Pokemon creates yet another interpretation, translating creatures and abilities into strategic cards that function according to different rules than the video games. This translation process requires reconceptualizing Pokemon combat in ways that work for turn-based card play, creating interesting discrepancies between how the same Pokemon function across different media. The merchandise ecosystem surrounding Johto extends the region's cultural impact beyond games into toys, clothing, home goods, and countless other products. Plushies of Johto starters and legendary Pokemon carry the region into physical space, allowing fans to surround themselves with reminders of adventures experienced digitally. The lasting influence of Johto on subsequent Pokemon generations appears in mechanics, design philosophies, and player expectations that originated here. The dual region structure, while rarely repeated with Johto's ambition, set expectations for post-game content that developers continue addressing through other means, like Battle Frontiers and extensive legendary quests. The character designs introduced in Johto, particularly the rival Silver and Champion Lance, established archetypes that recur across later games in new forms. The redemption arc of a troubled rival and the Dragon Master Champion appear repeatedly, demonstrating these character types' enduring appeal and effectiveness. The pacing lessons learned from Johto's design inform later games' approaches to balancing challenge and accessibility, progression, and exploration. The occasionally uneven level curve creates difficulty spikes that some players enjoy, while others find frustrating, leading to more careful tuning in subsequent titles. The weather systems visible throughout Johto create atmospheric variety that affects both the visual presentation and the types of Pokemon encountered in specific areas. Rain falls more frequently on certain routes, creating habitats for water-type Pokemon, even in areas without permanent bodies of water. These weather patterns suggest a regional climate influenced by ocean proximity, mountain ranges, and the mysterious forces associated with legendary Pokemon like Ho-Oh and Lugia. The seasonal changes implied by berry growth cycles and time-based events create a sense that Johto exists within natural cycles of growth and dormancy, even though the games don't implement full seasonal systems like later generations would introduce. The awareness of time passing, of patterns repeating while also progressing forward, adds depth to the world that static environments cannot provide. The architectural evolution visible between older structures, like the burned tower and newer buildings in Goldenrod City, demonstrates technological and cultural change occurring across different timescales. Some Johto settlements preserve traditions spanning centuries, while others embrace rapid modernization, creating a region where multiple historical periods coexist in geographic proximity. The religious syncretism, visible in Johto's spiritual practices, where traditional reverence for legendary Pokemon coexists with modern scientific research into these same creatures, reflects real-world tensions between faith and empiricism. Professor Elm studies Pokemon breeding scientifically, while Ecruteak's monks maintain spiritual practices honoring Ho-Oh, and both approaches are treated as valid within their respective contexts. The linguistic diversity implied by different naming conventions and cultural references across Johto's settlements suggests that the region encompasses multiple ethnic groups or historical populations that merged over time. The traditional Japanese naming in cities like Ecruteak contrasts with more Western-influenced names elsewhere, hinting at complex cultural histories that the games only suggest through environmental details. The economic disparity between settlements, though downplayed in the games, appears in details like the size and sophistication of buildings in Goldenrod City compared to the modest structures in New Bark Town. This disparity suggests wealth concentration in urban centers that draws population and resources away from rural areas, creating the same economic patterns visible in real-world development. The transportation infrastructure connecting Johto's settlements, from footpaths to the train system linking Goldenrod and Saffron to the SS Aqua providing ocean transit, demonstrates investment in connectivity that enables both commerce and trainer journeys. These transportation networks shape regional development and create the possibility for the kind of extended journey that trainers undertake. The absence of visible law enforcement in most areas raises questions about how order is maintained in a world where powerful creatures can be commanded by humans with varying ethical standards. The presence of gym leaders, who often intervene in local crises, suggests that strong trainers serve quasi-governmental roles, using their Pokemon and authority to protect communities. The educational system's minimal visibility in the games creates uncertainty about whether most children receive formal schooling or if trainer journeys represent the primary form of education for those who choose that path. The existence of specialized trainers, like bug catchers and youngsters, suggests that some education in Pokemon training occurs, though whether through formal institutions or informal mentorship remains unclear. The healthcare system centered on Pokemon centers provides universal free healing for Pokemon, indicating either government funding or a charitable system supported by the Pokemon League. The absence of visible hospitals or medical facilities for humans creates strange contrast, suggesting either that human healthcare remains off screen or that human medical needs are significantly less pressing in this world. The research institutions, as visible through Professor Elm's laboratory and references to other researchers, suggest a scientific establishment dedicated to understanding Pokemon through empirical study. The Pokédex project specifically represents collaborative big data collection, attempting to catalog and analyze every known Pokemon species through distributed observation by trainers. The technology disparities between regions, with some areas possessing advanced computers and storage systems, while others maintain pre-industrial lifestyles, raise questions about how technology diffuses through the Pokemon world, and why some communities reject or lack access to modern conveniences. The energy infrastructure powering Johto's cities and technology remains largely invisible, with no visible power plants or electrical grids, despite the obvious presence of electric lighting and computers. Electric-type Pokemon, like the Ampharos powering Olivine's lighthouse, suggest biological energy sources might supplement or replace conventional power generation. The environmental conservation ethic, visible in protected areas like the national park and the reverence shown to Ilex Forest, demonstrates cultural awareness of ecological preservation and the importance of maintaining wild spaces. This conservation ethic coexists with heavy human modification of landscapes around cities, creating the same tensions between preservation and development visible in real-world environmental politics. The water management systems implied by the Lake of Rage and various water routes suggest sophisticated understanding of hydrology and water conservation, essential in a region with both aquatic ecosystems to preserve and human populations requiring freshwater access. The agricultural systems that must exist to feed Johto's population remain mostly invisible in the games, with only scattered references to farming and the visible presence of Pokémon like Miltank that provide dairy products. This invisibility of food production creates an oddly pastoral vision where cities exist without apparent agricultural hinterlands supporting them. The fashion and clothing styles visible on trainers throughout Johto suggest cultural norms around dress that vary by age, gender, and trainer specialty. Bug catchers wear distinctive outfits with nets, while kimono girls maintain traditional dress that connects them to Ecruteak's historical identity. These clothing choices communicate social roles and affiliations without requiring explicit explanation. The music and entertainment culture, visible through the radio tower and various performance venues, suggests a creative economy exists alongside the Pokemon training economy that dominates the player's experience. The DJ Mary and other radio personalities have careers unrelated to Pokemon battles, demonstrating that not everyone in Johto pursues training as their primary occupation. The criminal justice system's approach to Team Rocket members who are defeated in battle but apparently face no legal consequences creates strange situations where known criminals continue operating openly after losing fights. This lenient approach suggests either weak law enforcement or that Pokemon battles serve as a form of ritualized conflict resolution that substitutes for conventional legal proceedings. The absence of visible weapons beyond Pokemon themselves indicates a society where personal combat has been channeled entirely into Pokemon battles, creating a form of ritualized warfare that prevents escalation to more lethal violence. This channeling requires cultural consensus that Pokemon battles represent legitimate forms of conflict resolution. The gender dynamics visible in gym leader distribution and trainer class assignments show relatively equal representation, with female gym leaders like Whitney, Jasmine, and Clair demonstrating that positions of authority are accessible regardless of gender. However, certain trainer classes like sailors or fire breathers remain gender segregated, suggesting some occupational gender norms persist. The age demographics of trainers encountered suggest that Pokemon training attracts primarily young people, with most trainers appearing to be children or teenagers. The absence of elderly trainers outside gym leaders and the Elite Four raises questions about what happens to trainers as they age and whether training represents a youthful pursuit that most eventually abandon. The family structures implied by references to parents and siblings suggest nuclear families remain the norm in Johto, though the games rarely show complete family units together. The willingness of parents to allow young children to travel alone suggests either extreme cultural trust in the safety of the world or desperation to provide opportunities their children couldn't access by remaining home. The religious institutions beyond the Bell Tower and Sprout Tower remain largely invisible, with no churches or temples serving the general population visible in Johto's cities. This absence might indicate that Pokemon-centered spirituality has replaced traditional organized religion, or simply that religious practice occurs off-screen in spaces the player never accesses. The death and mortality handling in Pokemon games generally avoids explicit acknowledgement, but Johto's lore around the legendary beasts directly addresses death and resurrection, acknowledging that Pokemon can die while also providing a miraculous exception through Ho-Oh's intervention. This acknowledgement creates darker undertones than the generally optimistic surface narrative suggests. The evolution mechanic's metaphorical resonance with maturation and personal growth creates thematic coherence, where gameplay systems reinforce narrative themes about growing up and becoming stronger through experience. The evolution requirements, varying by species, demonstrate that growth follows different paths for different individuals, a lesson that applies to human development as well. The bonding mechanics between trainers and Pokemon, particularly those affecting evolution like happiness and friendship, suggest that emotional connections have measurable effects on Pokemon development. This implies either that Pokemon biology responds to emotional states in ways that accelerate growth, or that the bond between trainer and Pokemon unlocks latent potential that would otherwise remain dormant. The breeding system's genetic inheritance creates dynasties of Pokemon that can be traced across multiple generations, with desirable traits passed from parents to offspring. This selective breeding mirrors real-world animal husbandry while avoiding uncomfortable questions about whether creating Pokemon specifically for battle constitutes ethical treatment or exploitation. The shiny variant's extreme rarity creates effectively unique Pokemon that become treasured possessions, with some trainers spending hundreds of hours hunting specific shiny species. This dedication demonstrates how collection goals can motivate sustained engagement beyond simple completion of the Pokédex. The Pokerus infection's beneficial effects create interesting situations where players actively seek to expose their Pokémon to this virus, inverting typical disease avoidance behavior. The mechanism by which Pokerus enhances growth remains unexplained, leaving room for speculation about whether it represents actual biological enhancement or unlocks training potential through unknown means. The item economy, based on money earned from Pokemon battles, creates a self-sustaining loop where stronger trainers can afford better items that make them stronger still. This economic structure rewards success and punishes failure, creating momentum that can make recovery from losses difficult for trainers who deplete their funds. The revive and revival herb mechanics raise questions about what exactly happens when a Pokemon faints and what these items do to reverse the condition. If fainting represents something like unconsciousness, revival seems straightforward. If it represents actual death, these items possess miraculous properties that should revolutionize medicine far beyond Pokemon applications. The status condition mechanics of poison, paralysis, burn, freeze, and sleep create combat complexity while raising questions about how these conditions affect Pokemon physiology. The ability to cure status conditions instantly with items suggests either that Pokemon biology responds remarkably quickly to treatment, or that these items possess properties beyond simple medicine. The held berry mechanics, where Pokemon automatically consume berries during battle when certain conditions are met, suggests a level of autonomous decision making that complicates questions about whether trainers control Pokemon completely or whether Pokemon retain agency during combat. The move deletion and relearning systems create flexibility in adapting Pokemon movesets while raising questions about what it means to forget a move. If moves represent learned skills, forgetting them makes sense. If they represent innate abilities, the concept of forgetting and relearning becomes more mysterious. The nature system affecting stat growth creates personality-like variations between individual Pokemon of the same species, suggesting that temperament affects development in measurable ways. This system adds another layer of individuality, making each Pokemon technically unique even before considering stat variations and move choices. The ability system introduced in later generations adds another dimension of individuality, with Pokemon of the same species potentially possessing different special abilities that affect battle performance. This system creates strategic depth while further differentiating individual Pokemon. The hidden power moves type, varying based on individual values, creates situations where identical Pokemon can have different hidden power types, adding unpredictability to encounters while rewarding players who understand the complex calculations determining type. The critical hit mechanic's randomness introduces chance elements that can swing battles unexpectedly, creating both exciting comebacks and frustrating defeats. The ability to increase critical hit rates through items and moves adds strategic control over this randomness. The speed stats determination of turn order creates situations where fragile but fast Pokemon can avoid damage entirely by eliminating threats before they attack. This speed-based tactical layer rewards prediction and planning while punishing teams that ignore speed in favor of pure power. The type effectiveness chart's complexity creates a learning curve that rewards memorization and system mastery, with experienced players able to quickly calculate optimal move choices, while newer players struggle to remember which types resist which attacks. The double battle format introduced in later generations adds complexity by requiring players to consider how Pokemon abilities interact and whether certain moves might damage allied Pokemon alongside opponents. This format creates team-building challenges distinct from single battle optimization. The triple battle and rotation battle formats push complexity further, though their relative unpopularity suggests that too much simultaneous complexity can overwhelm players rather than creating engaging challenge. The weather effect systems create field conditions that benefit certain types while hindering others, adding another strategic layer to team building and battle planning. Rain teams, sun teams, sand teams, and hail teams each optimize around specific weather conditions. The terrain effect systems introduced in later generations create similar field condition gameplay while affecting different stats and types, further expanding the strategic space available to competitive players. The entry hazard mechanics of spikes, stealth rock, and toxic spikes create passive damage that accumulates when Pokemon switch in, rewarding teams that force opponents to switch frequently while punishing reckless switching. The stat modification moves that raise or lower stats create setup opportunities where players invest early turns in preparation for overwhelming offense or impenetrable defense. These setup strategies create distinct playstyles from immediate aggression approaches. The priority move system allows certain moves to bypass normal speed calculations, creating counterplay to fast sweepers while adding another dimension to prediction and risk assessment during battles. The protect and detect moves create mind game situations where players must predict whether opponents will attack or use status moves, with wrong predictions wasting turns, but correct reads providing significant advantages. The substitute move creates decoy mechanics that can waste opponent attacks while providing opportunities for safe setup, though the health cost of creating substitutes creates risk that must be managed. The baton pass strategy of building stat boosts on one Pokemon before switching to pass those boosts to a different Pokemon creates unique team building requirements and can enable sweeps from unlikely Pokemon when executed successfully. The choice item mechanics that lock Pokemon into single moves in exchange for significant power or speed boosts create high risk, high reward situations where correct predictions dominate but wrong choices leave Pokemon vulnerable. The Life Orb and similar recoil damage items create trade-offs where extra power comes at the cost of gradual health loss, requiring players to calculate whether the increased damage justifies the reduced longevity. The Focus Sash and similar survival items create clutch moments where Pokemon survive attacks that should have eliminated them, enabling counterattacks that can turn losing situations into victories. The legendary Pokemon's restricted usage in certain competitive formats creates separate metagames where legendary Pokemon dominate and where they're banned, allowing for diverse competitive environments with different dominant strategies. The breeding mechanics complexity in producing competitive Pokemon with optimal natures, abilities, and individual values creates significant barriers to entry for competitive play, though later quality of life improvements have reduced this barrier somewhat. The EV training system's requirement to battle specific Pokemon to maximize particular stats creates grinding that some players enjoy as meditative and others find tedious, demonstrating how the same mechanics can appeal differently to different player temperaments. The level grinding required to compete at higher levels creates pacing that some players appreciate as giving them time to bond with their teams, while others see as artificial padding that extends playtime without adding meaningful content. The legendary Pokemon hunt quests that require specific conditions or items to trigger encounters create exploration goals that extend gameplay beyond the main story, while rewarding thorough investigation and experimentation. The mythology surrounding Johto's legendary Pokemon extends into side content and optional dialogues that flesh out the world for players who seek deeper engagement while remaining skippable for those focused on core progression. The environmental storytelling throughout Johto rewards observant players who piece together narratives from architectural details, NPC dialogue placement, and the distribution of Pokemon species across different habitats. The generational callbacks between Johto and Kanto create continuity that rewards players familiar with earlier games while remaining accessible to newcomers experiencing Johto as their first Pokemon game. The foreshadowing of future regions through NPC dialogue and item descriptions creates a sense of a larger world beyond Johto's boundaries, suggesting that the Pokemon world extends far beyond the immediately accessible areas. The cross-regional legendary Pokemon that appear in both Johto and other regions create questions about migration patterns and whether multiple individuals of legendary species exist, or if singular legendaries travel between regions. The event-exclusive Pokemon distributed through special promotions create inequality between players who attended events and those who didn't, though trading systems allow some redistribution of these exclusive creatures. The mythical Pokemon category's extreme rarity and limited distribution creates tiers of completion where catching every Pokemon becomes effectively impossible for most players without external assistance or event attendance. The clone and fake Pokemon from cheating devices create problems in trading economies and competitive play, requiring verification systems and trust between trading partners to ensure legitimate Pokemon. The living Pokédex goal of maintaining one of every Pokemon species simultaneously requires extensive storage management and represents one of the ultimate collection challenges for dedicated players. The Shiny Living Pokédex goal of obtaining shiny versions of every species represents an extreme challenge requiring thousands of hours and extreme dedication, appealing to only the most hardcore collectors. The ribbons and contest stat systems in later versions create alternative progression paths that reward engaging with contest mechanics and provide visual customization for treasured Pokemon. The Pokemon following features animations and interactions create personality moments that strengthen emotional bonds between players and their Pokemon partners, making the feature's removal in later games particularly disappointing to fans. The nickname system allows players to personalize their teams and create narratives around individual Pokemon, with some players developing extensive backstories for their nicknamed partners. The Battle Frontier facility's unique rule sets create specialized challenges that require different team compositions and strategies, testing mastery of various battle formats, rather than just standard single battles. The link cable and later wireless trading systems create social experiences where players meet to exchange Pokemon, fostering communities and friendships based on shared interest in collecting and training. The global trade station's anonymous trading creates efficiency at the cost of personal connection, allowing players to complete their Pokedexes without building relationships with trading partners. The Wonder Trade system's randomness creates exciting moments when valuable Pokemon appear unexpectedly, while also creating frustration when receiving unwanted common Pokemon repeatedly. The Pokemon Bank and home services create cloud storage that persists across multiple games, allowing players to maintain collections that span generations and preserve Pokemon obtained years earlier. The competitive battling scene that emerged from Johto's mechanics created communities dedicated to optimizing strategies and discovering powerful team combinations that casual play never reveals. Smogon and other competitive communities developed tier systems separating Pokemon by power level, creating balanced competitive environments where diverse strategies remain viable rather than seeing the same handful of overpowered Pokemon dominate every match. The metagame evolution as players discover new strategies and counter strategies creates living competitive environments that change over time even without official updates or patches. The discovery of specific movesets or item combinations that counter previously dominant strategies creates cycles where the competitive landscape constantly shifts as players adapt to each other's innovations. The role compression concept, where single Pokemon fulfill multiple team roles, simultaneously became increasingly important as competitive play matured, with successful teams requiring Pokemon that could threaten multiple opponent types while also providing defensive utility. This concept rewards creative team building and punishes one-dimensional Pokemon that excel in single areas while contributing nothing else. The prediction and mind games inherent in competitive Pokemon create psychological dimensions where understanding opponent tendencies and tendencies of the broader metagame becomes as important as raw team strength. The double-blind aspect, where neither player sees opponent teams before the match begins, adds another layer of uncertainty and rewards flexible teams that can adapt to unexpected opponent compositions. The speed tiers and specific speed benchmarks create breakpoints where single stat points determine whether a Pokemon outspeeds crucial threats, leading to careful EV allocation to hit exactly necessary speed stats while investing remaining points elsewhere. This optimization creates situations where seemingly identical Pokemon function completely differently based on subtle stat distribution differences. The damage calculation and range calculations that competitive players perform create probabilistic thinking where players must weigh guaranteed two-hit knockouts against risky one-hit knockout attempts that might fail on minimum damage rolls. This mathematical element adds depth for players who enjoy optimization while remaining largely invisible to casual players who simply select moves without calculating exact damage ranges. The team preview feature introduced in later generations changed competitive dynamics by allowing players to see opponent teams before selecting their lead Pokemon, creating an initial strategic layer where leads are chosen to counter or set up against predicted opponent leads. This feature rewards scouting and metagame knowledge while reducing the pure luck element of blind matchups. The importance of momentum in competitive battles creates situations where maintaining offensive pressure prevents opponents from safely switching or setting up, leading to strategies that prioritize forcing favorable matchups and punishing opponent attempts to regain control. Momentum swings during close battles create dramatic tension that makes competitive Pokemon engaging to watch and play. The stall versus offense versus balance team archetypes create rock, paper, scissors dynamics at the team level, where hyper-offensive teams can overwhelm defensive teams that haven't prepared properly, while those same defensive teams can exhaust offensive teams that lack the tools to break through stall cores. Balanced teams attempt to handle both extremes while sacrificing some specialization. The specific defensive cores built around type synergies and resistances create defensive foundations that require particular threats to break through, leading to the development of wall-breaking Pokemon whose sole purpose involves punching holes in defensive cores to enable teammates to sweep. This specialization creates diverse team-building philosophies where each Pokemon serves specific purposes. The revenge-killing concept, where faster Pokemon clean up weakened opponents, creates team-building requirements for speed demons that can come in after teammates fall and eliminate threats before they can do more damage. Priority moves that bypass speed calculations provide alternative revenge-killing options for slower Pokemon that lack natural speed. The wall-breaking concept, where immensely powerful Pokemon exist specifically to break through defensive cores, creates arms races between increasingly powerful breakers and increasingly resilient defensive Pokemon. This escalation creates power creep concerns across generations, as new Pokemon must meet or exceed previous generation power levels to remain relevant. The pivoting and momentum mechanics introduced through moves like Volt Switch and U-Turn create strategic switching where players maintain offensive pressure while rotating team members to gain favorable matchups. These moves transform switching from purely defensive plays into offensive tools that keep opponents on the back foot. The hazard removal and hazard setting minigame creates matches within matches where one player attempts to establish entry hazards while opponents work to remove them, with the success or failure of these efforts significantly impacting the broader battle outcome. Rapid Spin and Defogs provide hazard removal at the cost of other move slots, creating opportunity costs that must be weighed during team building. The status spreading and cleric support roles create team dynamics where certain Pokemon exist to cripple opponents with status conditions, while others provide healing to keep teammates healthy throughout extended battles. This support role specialization creates diverse gameplay where not every Pokemon focuses purely on dealing damage. The Trick Room and Tailwind mechanics that manipulate turn order create alternative speed paradigms where slow Pokemon suddenly become fast and vice versa, enabling entirely different team archetypes built around these field effects. These mechanics reward creativity and create surprise factor when opponents expect normal speed calculations. The gravity and magnetic field effects that modify accuracy and grounded status create niche mechanics that enable specific strategies while remaining rare enough that most players never seriously consider them. This mechanical depth rewards experimentation and creates occasional surprise strategies that catch opponents completely off guard. The power sharing and guard sharing mechanics that redistribute stats across the field create unique support options that can transform weak Pokemon into temporary powerhouses or create defensive juggernauts. These mechanics rarely see use, but demonstrate the breadth of strategic options available to creative team builders. The Wonder Room and Magic Room mechanics that swap defensive stats or disable items create chaos effects that disrupt normal battle flow and can enable otherwise unviable strategies. The temporary nature of these effects creates timing windows where specific plays become possible before the effect ends. The terrain wars between different terrain effects create resource management where players must decide whether to override opponent terrains with their own or play around existing terrain. Priority terrain setting abilities that activate immediately upon switching create automatic terrain control for specific Pokémon. The weather wars between different weather conditions create similar dynamics where players fight for weather control to enable their strategies while denying opponents theirs. The removal of permanent weather abilities in later generations reduced weather's dominance while maintaining its strategic importance. The format variety across official VGC rules, Smogon tiers, and other community-created formats creates diverse competitive scenes where players can choose formats matching their preferred playstyles and power levels. This diversity keeps competitive play fresh and accessible to players with different investment levels and preferences. The Dynamax and Gigantamax mechanics introduced in later generations created temporary power-ups that compressed games into shorter time frames while adding decision points about when to activate these transformations. The restricted nature of Dynamax in certain formats created dynamic shifts between formats that allowed it and those that banned it. The Z-move mechanics from earlier generations created similar one-time power spikes that rewarded careful timing and prediction about when opponents would activate their Z moves. The removal of these mechanics in subsequent generations demonstrated Nintendo's willingness to retire gimmicks rather than permanently incorporating every innovation. The Mega Evolution mechanics removal and return across different games created uncertainty about which mechanics represent permanent additions versus temporary gimmicks that will be retired. This uncertainty affects team building and long-term investment in mastering specific mechanics. The regional variant Pokémon introduced in later generations created alternate versions of existing species with different types and abilities, effectively creating new Pokémon while maintaining nostalgic connections to earlier generations. These variants allow developers to revisit old favorites while creating fresh, competitive options. The cross-generational evolution editions, where earlier Pokémon gain new evolutions, in later generations breathe new life into previously unviable species while creating continuity across the series. These evolutions reward longtime fans while providing new options that can shift competitive dynamics significantly. The frequent roster changes between generations create learning curves as players must understand new Pokémon and abilities while old threats disappear or change in viability. This churn keeps competitive play fresh while creating frustration for players attached to specific Pokémon that fall out of favor. The balance patches and official competitive rule adjustments demonstrate Nintendo's commitment to maintaining competitive integrity while also showing that perfect balance remains elusive despite development resources. The community's ability to self-regulate through tier systems and format creation provides additional balance when official rules prove insufficient. The prize pool growth in official tournaments creates professional competitive scenes where top players can earn substantial money, transforming Pokémon from purely hobby game into potential career path for the most skilled players. This professionalization raises stakes while also creating pressure and stress that weren't present in purely recreational competitive play. The streaming and content creation economy around competitive Pokémon creates opportunities for players to share knowledge and entertain audiences while earning income, further developing the professional ecosystem around competitive play. YouTube guides, Twitch streams, and written content create resources that help newer players enter competitive scenes. The team building as creative expression aspect of competitive Pokémon creates personal investment where players develop signature teams and strategies that represent their individual approaches to the game. The recognition of specific players based on their team building styles creates personalities and storylines within competitive communities. The preparation and scouting of likely opponents in tournament settings creates metagame layers where players must predict not just the broader competitive landscape, but specific opponent tendencies and favorite strategies. This preparation separates casual from serious competitive play and rewards dedication and study. The best of three match formats in serious competitive play create adaptation challenges where players must adjust strategies between games based on what opponent teams revealed in earlier games. This format rewards flexibility and punishes rigid strategies that cannot adapt to counter preparation. The team preview and team submission rules in official tournaments create information asymmetry between what opponents know about each other's teams and what they can prepare for, adding strategic depth to both team building and in-match decision making. The timer and turn limit rules in competitive play create pressure that affects decision making and can lead to rushed plays or timeout losses for players who spend too long calculating optimal moves. This time, pressure creates additional skill requirements beyond pure strategic knowledge. The lag and technical issues in online competitive play create frustrations and occasionally controversial match results where connection problems rather than skill determine outcomes. The move to local tournaments for high-stakes matches addresses these issues while creating accessibility barriers for players who cannot travel. The random number generation and critical hits in competitive play create ongoing debates about whether luck should play any role in serious competition and whether competitive formats should modify or remove random elements. Some communities embrace variance as part of the game, while others minimize it through rule modifications. The banned Pokémon and restricted formats create separation between casual anything-goes play and serious competitive scenes that restrict overpowered options to maintain diverse, viable strategies. These bans sometimes prove controversial when popular Pokémon become unviable in competitive formats. The Sleep Clause and Species Clause rules prevent certain dominant strategies while maintaining format diversity, though different competitive communities disagree about which rules create the healthiest competitive environments. This variation creates multiple competitive scenes with different philosophies about ideal balance. The ongoing debate between Smogon rules and VGC rules creates philosophical divides in competitive communities about whether singles or doubles represents true competitive Pokémon and whether community-created or official rules provide better competitive experiences. Both formats maintain dedicated followings and create different strategic landscapes. The preservation of older generation competitive scenes through emulation and custom servers allows players to continue competing in formats they prefer even after official support ends, creating competitive environments spanning the entire Pokémon series history. This preservation demonstrates the depth of competitive dedication within the community. The ROM hacking scene that creates difficulty hacks and new regions extends Johto's legacy into fan-created content that explores what Pokémon games could be with different design philosophies. These hacks range from simple difficulty increases to complete overhauls with new stories and mechanics. The randomizer scene that randomizes Pokémon encounters and item locations creates chaotic playthroughs where traditional strategies fail and players must adapt to whatever randomization provides. This randomization creates compelling content for streamers and personal challenge runs. The Nuzlocke challenge rules that create permadeath and restricted catching create difficulty and emotional investment in individual Pokémon survival that standard play lacks. The community variants of Nuzlocke rules demonstrate creative approaches to increasing challenge and creating personal narratives. The speedrunning community that optimizes Johto completion creates detailed route planning and execution challenges that reveal deep game knowledge and mechanical execution skill. The different speedrun categories, including glitchless, any percent, and 100% completion, create diverse competitive speedrunning scenes. The shiny hunting community that dedicates hundreds of hours to finding rare color variants creates meditation-like gameplay where patience and persistence are rewarded with unique trophies. The various shiny hunting methods, from random encounters to breeding to soft resetting, create different experiences and time investments. The competitive breeding community that produces perfect IV Pokemon for distribution helps newer competitive players access necessary tools while creating goodwill and community bonding. This community support reduces barriers to competitive entry that breeding complexity would otherwise create. The artistic community creating fan art, comics, and animations extends Johto's cultural presence beyond the games themselves into broader creative expression. The quality and volume of fan-created content demonstrates the deep emotional connections players form with Johto's characters, creatures, and locations. The music remixing and arrangement community that creates new versions of Johto's soundtrack keeps these melodies alive and introduces them to new audiences who might never play the original games. The enduring popularity of tracks like Ecruteak City's theme and the national park demonstrates the soundtrack's lasting cultural impact. The cosplay community that recreates trainer outfits and constructs Pokemon costumes brings Johto's visual designs into physical space at conventions and gatherings. The craftsmanship and dedication visible in high-quality cosplay demonstrates how deeply these designs resonate with fans. The plush collecting community that hunts rare official merchandise and creates custom plush of Pokemon without official versions extends collecting from digital space into physical possessions. The secondary market for rare merchandise creates substantial value for vintage items from Johto's original release. The card collecting community that values rare and vintage Johto-era trading cards creates parallel collecting challenges where condition, rarity, and special features determine value. The intersection of Pokemon card collecting with broader trading card game culture creates crossover appeal beyond pure Pokemon fans. The preservation community dedicated to maintaining playable versions of original Johto games fights against battery death and hardware degradation to keep authentic experiences accessible. This preservation extends to documentation of game mechanics, development history, and cultural context that might otherwise be lost. The translation community that creates fan translations of Japanese exclusive content and improved translations of official releases demonstrates dedication to accessibility and quality that sometimes exceeds official localization efforts. The accessibility community working to make Pokemon games playable for disabled players through custom controllers, modified game files, and specialized peripherals demonstrates that the Pokemon community values inclusion and works to ensure everyone can participate, regardless of physical limitations. The academic community studying Pokemon from sociological, psychological, and game design perspectives creates scholarly literature that treats these games as serious subjects worthy of critical analysis rather than dismissing them as mere children's entertainment. The economic analyses of Pokemon's business model, merchandise sales, and cultural impact demonstrate the series' massive commercial success and its influence on gaming industry business practices. The franchise's ability to maintain relevance across 3 decades while continuously generating revenue represents remarkable commercial achievement. The psychological research into why Pokemon appeals so broadly across age groups and cultures reveals insights about collection psychology, power fantasies, and the appeal of customization and self-expression through team building. The game design analyses examining what makes Pokemon's core loop so compelling despite relatively simple mechanics demonstrate the power of well-executed fundamental systems and the importance of progression feedback and goal variety in maintaining player engagement. The comparative mythology studies examining how Pokemon's legendary creatures draw from global mythological traditions while creating original synthesis demonstrate the series' sophisticated cultural synthesis and creative world building. The environmental messaging in Pokemon games, particularly visible in Johto through the reverence for nature and consequences of disrupting ecosystems, creates a subtle educational content about conservation and respecting natural systems. The social messaging around friendship, cooperation, and treating others with respect permeates Pokemon narratives while avoiding heavy handed preaching, creating moral frameworks that influence young players without feeling like lessons. The conflict resolution modeling, where battles substitute for violence, creates frameworks where competition occurs within agreed upon rules and losing carries minimal consequences beyond temporary setback. This modeling presents alternatives to zero-sum conflicts where one side must be destroyed. The mentorship dynamics between player characters and professors, gym leaders, and other authority figures model positive relationships where experts support newcomers while maintaining boundaries and allowing independent growth. The coming-of-age narrative structure where young trainers leave home and face challenges before returning transformed mirrors universal human experiences of growth through adversity and exploration beyond familiar environments. The found family dynamics that develop between trainers and their Pokemon teams create emotional bonds that substitute for biological family connections, demonstrating that chosen relationships can be as meaningful as those determined by birth. The legacy and inheritance themes visible in Pokemon passing abilities to offspring and trainers inheriting Pokemon from previous trainers create continuity across generations while allowing for change and growth within tradition. The memory and nostalgia mechanics where returning to earlier locations reveals how much has changed since first visiting, creates bittersweet recognition of growth and loss of innocence that accompanies maturation. The tradition versus progress tensions, visible in settlements like Ecruteak, preserving historical architecture, while Goldenrod embraces modernization, reflect broader cultural debates about balancing preservation with development. The individual versus collective tensions, where trainers pursue personal goals within structured systems like the Pokemon League, reflect broader questions about balancing personal ambition with social responsibility and communal good. The power and responsibility themes where trainers command powerful creatures capable of destruction must exercise restraint and judgment, create frameworks for thinking about authority and its ethical exercise. The diversity and acceptance messaging, where hundreds of different Pokemon species coexist despite vast differences, creates metaphors for human diversity and the value of differences rather than homogeneity. The perseverance and resilience modeling, where trainers face repeated setbacks but continue pursuing goals, demonstrates that failure represents learning opportunity rather than permanent defeat, creating growth mindsets in players. The curiosity and exploration encouragement, where hidden areas and secrets reward investigation, models the value of looking beyond obvious paths and asking questions about how things work. The patience and delayed gratification lessons inherent in evolution requirements and breeding mechanics teach that valuable results often require sustained effort over time rather than instant rewards. The resource management lessons from limited inventory space, money management, and choosing which Pokemon to train create frameworks for thinking about opportunity costs and making choices with imperfect information. The risk assessment lessons from deciding which moves to use and when to switch Pokemon create frameworks for evaluating probabilities and making decisions under uncertainty. The long-term planning lessons from team building and preparing for specific challenges create frameworks for setting goals and working backward to determine necessary preparation steps. The adaptation and flexibility lessons from facing unexpected challenges and adjusting strategies mid-battle demonstrate the value of maintaining multiple options rather than committing rigidly to single approaches. The observation and pattern recognition lessons from learning enemy behaviors and type matchups create frameworks for gathering information and drawing conclusions from evidence. The systems, thinking lessons from understanding how different mechanics interact and affect each other, create frameworks for seeing complex wholes rather than isolated parts. The community and cooperation lessons from trading and battling with others demonstrate that some goals require collaboration and that competition can coexist with friendship and mutual respect. The cultural literacy created by Pokemon's global reach means that references to Pokemon provide common ground across linguistic and cultural barriers, creating shared vocabulary for discussing concepts and experiences. The intergenerational appeal, where parents who played at Johto's original release now share the games with their children, creates family bonding opportunities and transmission of gaming culture across generations. The nostalgia and comfort that longtime players derive from returning to Johto creates a safe spaces where familiar mechanics and settings provide respite from stress and uncertainty in other life areas. The creative outlet that team building and strategy development provides allows players to express themselves through choices that reflect personal values and aesthetic preferences. The mastery satisfaction from gradually improving at competitive play or completing difficult challenges provides a sense of accomplishment and growth that may be harder to achieve in other life domains. The collection completion satisfaction from filling the Pokédex provides clear goals and measurable progress that create dopamine rewards and sense of achievement. The social connection through shared interest in Pokemon creates communities and friendships based on common passion, providing belonging and acceptance. The escapism into Johto's world provides temporary relief from real-world problems while maintaining enough challenge and engagement to avoid feeling empty or unproductive. The identity formation around being a Pokemon fan or competitive player creates sense of self and belonging to communities with shared values and interests. The ritual and routine comfort from regular play sessions creates structure and predictability that can reduce anxiety and provide grounding during turbulent life periods. The emotional processing through identifying with characters and Pokemon provides safe frameworks for exploring feelings and experiences that might be difficult to confront directly. The power fantasy fulfillment of commanding powerful creatures and overcoming impossible odds provides compensation for feelings of helplessness or lack of control in real life. The competence building through mastering complex systems creates self-efficacy and confidence that can transfer to other life domains requiring learning and skill development. The stress relief through engaging with low-stakes challenges that provide clear feedback creates relaxation without the passivity of purely consumptive entertainment. Thanks for staying with this journey through Johto's lore. These are the stories that wandered close to existence before turning into the memories we carry tonight.